The cardiac monitor shrieked its death song at 3:47 a.m. in Trauma Bay. 4 of Mercy General Hospital in Clearwater Heights, a woman everyone called the Limping Ghost, stood motionless as doctors screamed orders across a dying man's body. Elena Vasquez, 52, gray-streaked hair pulled tight, perpetual limp from a knee that never healed right, pressed herself against the wall like she'd learned to do. Invisible. Forgettable. Safe. Until the colonel's eyes snapped open, wild with oxygen starvation, and locked onto hers. His lips moved. No sound came, but Elena read the shape of her old rank like a punch to the sternum. Major. The heart monitor flatlined. Please subscribe and follow this story to the very end. Like this video and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. The smell hit first. Always did. Antiseptic and copper, floor wax and fear. Elena Vasquez had been breathing it for 18 months at Mercy General, and it still tasted like penance. She pushed through the ER entrance at 10:58 p.m., 2 minutes early for the graveyard shift, her bad knee already aching from the walk across the parking garage. The automatic doors hissed shut behind her. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that particular shade of institutional white that made living people look half dead. Evening, Ms. Vasquez. The security guard, Marcus, good kid, community college nights, nodded from his desk. Evening. She signed the log. Her handwriting looked old, careful. The script of someone who'd learned to make herself small. The nurses' station buzzed with the usual chaos. Saturday night in a level 2 trauma center meant the waiting room already held a drunk college kid with a split eyebrow, a grandmother clutching her chest, and a construction worker whose hand was wrapped in a shirt that used to be white. Triage had its rhythm. Elena knew it by heart. Oh good, the charity case is here. Dr. Nathan Cross didn't look up from his tablet as Elena approached the assignment board. 28, chief resident, Harvard pedigree he mentioned approximately every 11 minutes. His white coat was starched sharp enough to cut. Try not to screw up any IVs tonight, yeah? We've got actual patients. 2 nurses at the med cart snickered. Elena didn't respond. She'd learned that too. I'm serious, Vasquez. Cross finally met her eyes, his smile surgical and cold. You missed 3 sticks on that diabetic yesterday. 3. My grandmother could hit a vein better than you, and she's been dead for 6 years. Noted. Elena took her assignment sheet. The worst beds, the vomit rooms, the holds waiting for psych evaluation. Standard. You know what noted means, right? Cross stepped closer, voice dropping to that particular register of professional cruelty. It means I'm documenting your incompetence, building a file. Because someone your age, with your limitations, his eyes flicked to her knee, shouldn't be taking up space in a facility this competitive. There are younger nurses, faster nurses, who actually deserve. Dr. Cross, incoming, the charge nurse's voice cut through. MVA, 3 minutes out, 32-year-old male, ejected from vehicle, GCS-5 BP tanking. Cross transformed instantly, the contempt sliding off his face like a mask. Prep Trauma 1. Get me 2 units O-neg on standby and page anesthesia. Move, people! The ER erupted into choreographed chaos. Elena stepped aside as residents sprinted past, as equipment carts rolled toward Trauma 1, as the whole machine of emergency medicine spun to life. She moved to her assigned section, the minor care zone, the overflow, the place where nothing life-threatening ever happened, which was exactly where they wanted her. The drunk kid needed 4 stitches, the grandmother needed reassurance and a GI cocktail. The construction worker needed x-rays and tetanus. Elena worked through them with the steady competence of someone who'd once held a surgical instrument in one hand and a rifle in the other, who'd once made decisions that kept 19-year-olds breathing long enough to see home. But that was a different life, a different Elena. This Elena limped between beds, apologized when she took too long, and accepted insults like they were part of her uniform. Vasquez! Cross's voice boomed from Trauma 1. We need warm blankets, now! She grabbed 4 from the warmer and brought them over. The MVA patient was already intubated, chest tube in, monitors beeping their urgent mathematics. Cross didn't look at her when he snatched the blankets. Slower next time and he'd be hypothermic. Jesus, get out. Elena left. At 1:15 a.m., she was restocking supply room 3 when she heard them. Voices carried through the thin walls of the break room. I'm telling you, she's a liability. Cross. She hesitates on every procedure. She's slow as hell, and half the time she looks like she's going to have a panic attack. Maybe she's just, I don't know, cautious? A younger voice. Resident, probably. New. Cautious is one thing. Incompetent is another. The snap of a can opening. I've been keeping notes, 3 months, tops, and I'll have enough to recommend termination. We can't afford dead weight, especially not in trauma. She's been here almost 2 years, though. Someone must think someone felt sorry for her. That's it. Cross's voice hardened. This isn't a charity. We save lives. We don't babysit washed-up nurses who can barely walk. Elena's hand stilled on the box of gauze she'd been unpacking. Her knee throbbed. She waited for the anger, but it didn't come anymore. Just the hollow ache of truth she'd swallowed so many times it had become part of her. She finished restocking and moved on. At 2:33 a.m., the night found its rhythm. A kid with croup, an elderly man with a nosebleed, a woman having a panic attack who gripped Elena's hand and said, "Thank you," like it was a prayer. Elena stayed with her an extra 10 minutes, breathing slow, speaking soft, until the woman's heart rate dropped below 100. Vasquez! The charge nurse appeared, clipboard tight against her chest. Need you on standby. We've got a call coming in. Military transport, high priority patient, ETA 8 minutes. Elena's stomach dropped. Military? Air Force colonel? Some kind of medical emergency during a base event. They're flying him in. She glanced at Elena's knee. You'll probably be on supply duty. Just stay available. 8 minutes became 6, became 4. The ER shifted, preparing. Trauma 1 cleared. The best nurses assembled. Cross appeared, freshly caffeinated, barking orders like he was directing an orchestra of scalpels. Elena stood near the supply closet, hands folded, invisible. The helicopter's rotor wash rattled the windows before they heard it. Then the thunder of it landing on the roof pad, the slam of doors, the rush of footsteps. Coming through! Coming through! The doors burst open. 2 paramedics, 1 Air Force medic, and a stretcher carrying a man in dress blues. Even through the oxygen mask, Elena could see the eagles on his collar. Full bird colonel, maybe 55, gray at the temples, unconscious but breathing. 60-year-old male, syncope at a military ceremony, history of hypertension, BP 180 over 110, pulse 140, responsive to pain only. The Air Force medic rattled off vitals while they transferred him to the trauma bed. Started seizing in the ambulance, gave 2 of Ativan, stopped after 90 seconds. Cross took command. Get me a full trauma panel, CBC, CMP, talk screen, and a head CT. Someone page neurology. Let's move. Elena watched from the doorway as the team swarmed. IVs placed. EKG, leads attached. The mechanical ballet of emergency medicine. Vasquez! Cross didn't even glance her direction. Go get me 4 bags of saline from Central Supply. We're running low. It was busy work. They had saline. But she went anyway. By the time she returned, the colonel was seizing again. His whole body went rigid, back arching, the monitors screaming. Cross was shouting for more Ativan, for someone to hold him down, for the crash cart. Elena set the saline bags on the counter and stepped back. But something stopped her from leaving. She watched the monitors, watched the rhythm, watched the way the colonel's neck was swelling, subtle but real, the way his oxygen saturation kept dropping despite the mask, the way his jugular veins were distending. Her hands went cold. Dr. Cross, her voice came out quiet. He didn't hear her. Dr. Cross, his airway, not now, Vasquez. He was drawing up another dose of Ativan. Someone get me. His trachea is deviating, louder now. He's not seizing, he's stroking. Cross turned, his face pure irritation. Excuse me? Look at his neck. Look at the swelling. It's not seizure activity. It's a cerebrovascular event. The pressure is building and his airway is compromising. He needs you to shut the hell up and let me do my job. Cross turned back to the patient. Give me the Ativan. Elena's heart hammered. Every instinct screamed at her. She saw it. She knew. The signs were textbook. If you give him more sedation, you'll depress his respiratory drive. He needs an emergent airway and so... Security! Cross's voice cut like a whip. Get this woman out of my trauma bay. Now! 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Marcus wasn't one of them. Ma'am, you need to step out. Elena's knee buckled as she stepped back. The pain flared white-hot, but she stayed standing. Please, just check his... Vasquez, you're done. Cross pointed at the door. You just questioned a physician in the middle of a crisis. That's insubordination. That's interference with patient care. You're off this floor. Go to the lounge and wait for the supervisor. The room had gone quiet. Every nurse, every tech, every resident was staring. Elena looked at the colonel. His oxygen sat at 88%. Dropping. She turned and walked out. The hallway stretched long and bright. Her footsteps echoed. Her knee screamed. She made it to the staff lounge, sat in a plastic chair and waited. Through the walls, she heard the muffled chaos. Shouting, running, the metallic crash of equipment. Then, at 3:47 a.m., the alarm. The sound every medical professional knows. The sound that means someone is dying. Elena stood without thinking. Her knee didn't matter. She moved to the door, looked through the window into Trauma 1. The colonel was flatlined. Cross was frozen, eyes wide, hands hovering over the patient like he'd forgotten what they were for. The nurses were scrambling. Someone was charging the defibrillator. Someone else was doing compressions, but the rhythm was wrong, too shallow, not enough. And in the midst of it all, the colonel's airway had completely closed. Elena's hand was on the door handle before she realized it. Every rational thought said, stop. Every rule said, don't. She was already reported, already in trouble, already marked for termination. Walking back in would end her career permanently. But she'd taken an oath once that hadn't included the word unless. She pushed the door open. Step away from the patient. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Not loud, not harsh, just absolute. Cross spun. What the? Get her out of here. Elena walked straight to the bedside, her limp gone, her movement suddenly sharp and precise. You've got about 90 seconds before you lose him permanently. His airway is completely occluded. Compressions won't matter if no oxygen is moving. You are not authorized to... I need a scalpel, a 6.0 ET tube, and a bag valve mask. Now. She didn't look at Cross. She looked at the senior nurse, a woman named Patricia, who'd worked trauma for 20 years. Patricia hesitated for exactly 2 seconds. Then she grabbed the equipment. Cross grabbed Elena's shoulder. You touch that patient, and I will have you arrested for assault. Elena met his eyes. Something in her gaze made him let go. Then arrest me. She turned to the colonel, took the scalpel, and made a single vertical incision at the base of his throat. The room went silent except for the monitors. Her hands moved like they'd never stopped. Like the 18 months of limping and apologizing and hiding had been a dream. She located the cricothyroid membrane, made a horizontal incision, inserted the tube with perfect precision, and connected the bag valve. Breathe for him, 20 per minute. Watch the chest rise. Patricia squeezed the bag. The colonel's chest lifted, fell, lifted again. The monitor beeped. Once, twice. Then a rhythm, thready, weak, but there. Elena stepped back, her hands covered in blood, and watched the oxygen saturation climb. 72, 78, 85, 91. The colonel's eyes fluttered. Cross stood 5 feet away, his face the color of old snow. You performed a surgical procedure without authorization. You're done. You're finished. Elena looked at him, then at the colonel, breathing steadily now, color returning to his face. Call neurology, she said quietly. He's got a posterior circulation stroke. He'll need imaging and probably intervention within the hour. The airway will hold, but he needs a controlled setting for extubation. She walked toward the door, her knee remembering to hurt again. Security! Cross's voice shook. Detain her! She assaulted a patient! Patricia cut him off, her voice steady and cold. She saved his life, Nathan. We all saw it. Elena didn't wait to hear the rest. She walked out of Trauma 1, down the hallway, past the nurse's station where staff stood frozen, watching her like she'd just walked through fire. She made it to the locker room before her hands started shaking. She sat on the bench, staring at the blood under her fingernails, and waited. 20 minutes later, the supervisor arrived. Hospital security followed. Then risk management. Then, at 5:15 a.m., as the sun started breaking over Clearwater Heights, 2 detectives from the police department. They escorted her to a conference room on the administrative floor. Bare walls, long table, the kind of room where careers died. Ms. Vasquez. The risk management director, a man named Howell with wire-rimmed glasses and a voice like wet cardboard, sat across from her. Do you understand the severity of what you've done? Elena said nothing. You performed an invasive surgical procedure without physician authorization. You violated hospital protocol. You countermanded a direct order from the attending physician. He laid out a stack of papers. We have statements from Dr. Cross, from the nursing staff, from security. This is a terminable offense. This is potentially criminal. One of the detectives leaned forward. Did you have reason to believe Dr. Cross's treatment plan was inadequate? I had reason to believe the patient would die without immediate airway intervention. But Dr. Cross is a physician. You're a nurse. What made you think... I'm a nurse now. Elena looked at him. I used to be other things. Howell shuffled papers. Your employment record shows you came to us from a smaller facility in Montana. Before that, there's a gap. 6 years with no documented employment in healthcare. That's correct. What were you doing during that time, Ms. Vasquez? Elena's jaw tightened. Recovering. From what? She didn't answer. The questions continued for an hour. The same questions, different angles, building a case. Elena responded in short sentences, giving nothing extra, volunteering nothing. She'd been interrogated before by people much scarier than hospital administrators. At 6:30 a.m., Howell slid a document across the table. This is a voluntary resignation form with a waiver of liability. You sign this, admit wrongdoing, and we don't pursue criminal charges or report you to the nursing board. You leave quietly, we give you 2 weeks severance, and everyone moves on. Elena stared at the paper. Your other option, the detective said, is we file charges for assault and practicing medicine without a license. That's prison time, Ms. Vasquez. Real prison. Is that really how you want this to end? Outside the window, the sun was fully up now. The city woke, oblivious. Cars on the highway, coffee shops opening. Normal people living normal lives. Elena picked up the pen. She held it over the signature line, the weight of it suddenly immense. Then, from somewhere deep in the building, a sound. Distant, rhythmic. Footsteps. Heavy boots. A lot of them. Howell frowned. What the... The conference room door opened. A young man in Air Force fatigues stood there, eyes sharp, jaw set. Sir, ma'am, you need to evacuate this room immediately. Excuse me? Howell stood. This is a private... Sir, this facility is now under military authority pending a federal investigation. Please exit the room. You can't just... 2 more airmen appeared, carrying rifles, not pointing them, just there. Howell's face went purple. This is a civilian hospital. You have no... We have every jurisdiction, sir. Please step outside. Now. The detectives looked at each other, then stood. Howell grabbed his papers, sputtering protests that died in his throat when he saw what was happening in the hallway. Men in uniform, at least 20 of them, moving with purpose, sealing doors, checking rooms. Elena sat frozen, pen still in her hand. One of the airmen looked at her. Ma'am, please remain seated. Someone will be with you shortly. They cleared the room, closed the door, posted guards outside. Elena was alone. She set down the pen and waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then the door opened again. A man entered, older, maybe 65, wearing a service uniform so decorated it looked like a museum display. 3 stars on his shoulder boards, salt and pepper hair cut military tight, eyes that had seen things that left marks. He looked at Elena for a long moment. Then he stood at attention and saluted. Major Elena Vasquez, Lieutenant General Howard Brandt, United States Air Force. Permission to speak freely, ma'am. The room tilted. Elena's voice came out broken. I haven't been a major in 8 years, sir. The United States Air Force doesn't recognize your resignation, Major. You left under duress. That makes it invalid. He lowered his salute. And the man you saved 3 hours ago? Colonel James Whitmore, commander of the 412th Test Wing, father of 3, grandfather of 7, also happens to be my best friend since basic training, 42 years ago. Elena couldn't breathe. Brant sat down across from her, his movements deliberate. Jim woke up an hour ago. First thing he did was ask for you by name. Took me a while to piece it together. Elena Vasquez, former Air Force combat surgical officer, 16 years of service, 3 deployments, Silver Star recipient. You pulled 9 wounded soldiers out of an ambush in Helmand Province in 2016 under heavy fire. Lost your knee doing it. Medical retirement, 2017. Sir, You disappeared after that. No one knew where you went. Turned out you were hiding in small-town ERs, limping through night shifts, letting people like Nathan Cross treat you like garbage. His voice hardened. Why? Elena looked at her hands. Because I couldn't save all of them, sir. 9 made it. 3 didn't. I dream about those 3 every night. What I could have done different. What I should have. Major. Brant's voice was gentle now. Those 3 were KIA before you reached them. Command review confirmed it. You saved 9 lives that were supposed to be lost. That's not failure. That's heroism. It didn't feel like heroism. It never does. He pulled out a tablet, turned it toward her. This is Colonel Whitmore's chart from tonight. Want to know what the neurologist said? Elena didn't answer. Complete posterior circulation stroke. His basilar artery was 90% occluded, another 3 minutes without oxygen, and he'd have been brain dead. Brant's finger tapped the screen. Your cricothyroidotomy was perfect. Textbook. The kind of field medicine that only comes from someone who's done it under fire. Dr. Cross said, Dr. Cross is currently in a locked room being questioned by Air Force investigators about why he tried to intimidate you into resigning after you saved a senior military officer's life. Brant's smile was thin and cold. He's also being asked about falsified incident reports, witness tampering, and possible conspiracy to cover up medical negligence. Turns out a lot of people are suddenly very interested in talking now that there are federal charges on the table. Elena's breath caught. Federal charges? Whitmore is a high-value military asset. Any interference with his care falls under federal jurisdiction, and attempting to coerce the person who saved him into signing a false confession? Brant shook his head. That's a special kind of stupid. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the hospital below. You know what Jim said when he woke up? He said, there was a woman. She looked afraid, but her hands were steady, like she'd done this before, like she knew exactly what to do. Brant turned back. He remembered you from the ceremony. You were in the audience, civilian clothes, keeping to yourself. He said you had the bearing. He knew. I didn't think anyone would recognize. You can take off the uniform, Major, but you can't take off what it made you. Brant walked back to the table. Now here's what's going to happen. This hospital is under investigation. Everyone who touched your case is being interviewed. Your record is being reviewed by JAG. And you're going to tell me right now what you want. Elena stared at him. Sir, you saved a colonel's life tonight. You did it after being humiliated, after being ordered to leave, after being threatened with arrest. You did it because it was right. His eyes locked on hers. So I'm asking you, Major Elena Vasquez, what do you want? What does justice look like to you? The unsigned resignation form still sat on the table between them. Elena looked at it, then at the general, then out the window at the hospital where she'd spent 18 months being invisible. I want to stop hiding, she said quietly. I want to stop apologizing for being good at something that matters. Brant smiled. Then consider it done. He picked up the resignation form and tore it in half. The sound of tearing paper echoed in the silent conference room like a gunshot. Elena watched the 2 halves of the resignation form flutter to the table, her signature line severed down the middle. General Brant's hands were steady, his expression carved from stone and certainty. You're going to need legal representation, he said, pulling out his phone. Military counsel will be assigned within the hour. Until then, you don't speak to anyone from hospital administration without an attorney present. Clear? Yes, sir. The words came automatically, muscle memory from a life she'd tried to bury. Good. Brant moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Major. Jim asked me to tell you something. He said you looked him in the eye right before he lost consciousness. Said it was the last thing he remembered. Someone who wasn't afraid. Someone who knew. Elena's throat tightened. She remembered that moment. The colonel's pupils dilating, his hand reaching for her even as the seizure took him. She'd seen that look before. Baghdad. Kandahar. The same desperate hope that someone, anyone, would know what to do when the world went dark. Tell him I'm glad he's alive, sir. Brant nodded once and left, the door closing with a soft click that felt like the sealing of something irreversible. Elena sat alone in the conference room for 3 minutes before a knock came. A woman entered, late 30s, captain's bars, JAG Corps insignia on her uniform. Dark hair pulled back severe, eyes sharp as scalpels. Major Vasquez, Captain Rebecca Torres, Judge Advocate General's Corps. I've been assigned as your legal counsel. She set a briefcase on the table, opened it with practiced efficiency. Before we begin, I need to confirm, do you want military representation or would you prefer civilian counsel? I haven't been active duty in 8 years. Your retirement was medical, not administrative. You retained certain rights, including legal representation in matters involving military personnel or facilities. Colonel Whitmore's status makes this a military matter. Torres pulled out a tablet. So I'll ask again, do you want me or do I call you a civilian lawyer? Elena looked at the captain's uniform, at the ribbon bar that included a bronze star, at the way she'd arranged her materials with the precision of someone who treated details like weapons. You, Elena said. Torres smiled. It wasn't warm. It was the smile of a predator who'd just been given permission to hunt. Smart choice. Now talk me through tonight, every detail, from the moment you walked in until General Brant tore up that coercion document they tried to make you sign. Elena talked. Torres listened, typing notes rapid fire, stopping her occasionally for clarification. 20 minutes, 30. The whole night laid out like evidence. Okay. Torres leaned back. Here's where we stand. Hospital administration is in full panic mode. They know they screwed up. They know they tried to intimidate a federal witness. They know they've got a chief resident who's about to become a liability they can't afford. What happens to Cross? That depends on what the investigation finds. But between you and me? Torres's eyes gleamed. He's done. The moment he ordered you out of that trauma bay against your medical judgment, he opened himself up to negligence claims. The moment he tried to coerce your resignation, he committed a federal offense, and the moment he put his hands on you to stop you from saving Colonel Whitmore's life, he committed assault. Elena hadn't thought about that, cross-grabbing her shoulder, trying to physically prevent her from treating the patient. There were witnesses, Torres continued, nurses, techs, security footage, all of it being collected right now by very serious people who take very dim views of anyone who interferes with military medical operations. She closed her tablet. You're not the one in trouble here, Major. They are. A knock interrupted them. An airman entered, young and crisp. Ma'am, General Brant requests Major Vasquez's presence in the ICU. Colonel Whitmore is awake and asking for her. Torres looked at Elena. You don't have to go. You're not obligated to speak with him. I know. Elena stood, her knee protesting. But I want to. The walk through the hospital felt surreal. 2 armed airmen flanked her, not as guards but as escorts. Staff stopped and stared. Whispers followed her like a wake. The limping nurse who'd been invisible for 18 months was suddenly the center of a storm. They took the staff elevator to the ICU on the 4th floor. The unit was normally controlled chaos, but today it had the eerie quiet of a space under occupation. More military personnel. More uniforms. The regular ICU staff moved like ghosts, uncertain of their own territory. Colonel Whitmore was in a private room at the end of the hall, monitors beeping steadily, oxygen running at 2 liters through a nasal cannula. He looked diminished in the hospital bed, but his eyes were sharp when Elena entered. General Brant stood beside the bed. He nodded to Elena, then quietly left the room. Whitmore's voice came out raspy, damaged from the emergency airway. I owe you my life. You don't owe me anything, sir. Elena stayed near the door, suddenly uncertain. Come here. It wasn't a request. She approached the bedside. Up close, she could see the surgical incision on his neck, neatly closed now with sutures, the bruising from the IV lines, the weariness in his face. They told me what you did, Whitmore said. Told me you went against orders. Told me you performed field surgery in a civilian ER because the doctor was too incompetent to recognize a stroke. He coughed, winced. Told me you were going to lose your job for saving me. It was the right thing to do. The right thing. Whitmore smiled faintly. You know how many people say that and don't mean it? How many people talk about duty and honor and then fold the second it costs them something? His hand moved, found hers. You didn't fold. You walked back into that room knowing it would destroy you, and you did it anyway. Elena's eyes burned. I took an oath, sir, a long time ago. Some oaths don't expire. No, Whitmore said quietly. They don't. He was quiet for a moment, breathing carefully, gathering strength. I remember you from the ceremony, the change of command. You were in the back trying to disappear, but I saw how you stood, how you held yourself. I thought, there's a veteran, someone who served. He squeezed her hand. I didn't know it was you. The woman from Helmand, the one they gave the silver star. Elena went still. How did you? Howard told me, after he finished tearing this hospital a new foundation. Whitmore's smile turned sharp. You saved 9 soldiers that day. One of them was my nephew. Did you know that? The room tilted. Staff Sergeant David Whitmore. Took shrapnel to the femoral artery. You held pressure for 40 minutes while under fire, then carried him half a mile to the evac site. Whitmore's voice roughened. He's a firefighter now, in Phoenix, has 2 kids. He wouldn't have any of that without you. Elena couldn't speak. So when I woke up this morning and they told me what happened, what that bastard doctor tried to do to you? Whitmore's eyes hardened. I made some calls to people who make things happen, and I'm going to tell you what's about to happen, Major Vasquez, whether you like it or not. He outlined it in short sentences, between breaths. The investigation was federal now. The hospital was under review by military medical oversight. Cross was suspended pending criminal inquiry. Every nurse, every tech, every person who'd witnessed the events in Trauma 1 was being interviewed by investigators who knew exactly how to extract truth. They're going to try to settle, Whitmore said. Offer you money, a quiet departure, a good recommendation. They'll make it sound reasonable, like you're being difficult if you don't take it. I won't take it. Good. Because you're not leaving. You're staying right here, and you're watching every single person who tried to destroy you face consequences. He coughed again, harder. That doctor put his hands on you. He tried to stop you from saving my life. That's not a mistake. That's not a judgment call. That's assault and obstruction, and he's going to answer for it. A nurse appeared in the doorway, one of the ICU regulars, a woman named Sarah, who Elena had seen around but never worked with directly. Colonel, you need to rest. Your blood pressure is... I'll rest when I'm done talking. Sarah's eyes flicked to Elena, something unreadable there. Then she withdrew. Whitmore turned back to Elena. They're going to come at you. Hospital lawyers, insurance companies, maybe even the state medical board if Cross is stupid enough to file a complaint. You need to be ready. I have Captain Torres. You have more than that. You have the United States Air Force, which takes a very personal interest when someone tries to punish a decorated veteran for doing exactly what she was trained to do. He released her hand. Now get out of here. You look exhausted. Howard will make sure you get somewhere safe to sleep. Elena wanted to argue, but the colonel's eyes were already closing. She left quietly. In the hallway, General Brandt was waiting with Captain Torres. Hospital administration wants a meeting, Torres said. 2 hours. They're bringing their legal team. Let them bring an army, Brandt said. We have the facts. They moved Elena to a hotel 3 blocks from the hospital, a corporate place with efficient staff and rooms that smelled like air freshener and loneliness. 2 airmen posted outside her door. Protection, they said. Standard procedure. Elena showered, watching the colonel's blood swirl down the drain, then collapsed onto the bed, still wearing the scrubs someone had found for her. She meant to sleep for an hour. She woke to pounding on the door and sunlight streaming through gaps in the curtains. "Major Vasquez, we need to move!" She lurched upright, knee screaming. The clock read 11:47 a.m. She'd been asleep for 5 hours. Captain Torres was in the hallway, tablet in hand, moving fast. "Meeting got moved up. They want to talk now. Conference room at the hospital, 30 minutes. Elena dressed in the civilian clothes someone had retrieved from her locker. Jeans, a plain blue shirt, shoes that had seen better years. She looked in the mirror and saw a woman caught between two lives, belonging to neither. The hospital conference room was larger this time. Floor-to-ceiling windows, long table, and a small army of people in expensive suits. Hospital legal team, 5 lawyers, all sharp-eyed and document-armed. The CEO, a man named Brennan with silver hair and a smile that had been focus-grouped into existence. The chief of staff, the head of risk management, even a representative from the hospital's insurance company. On the other side, Elena, Captain Torres, General Brandt, and a JAG lieutenant colonel who'd arrived that morning from the Pentagon. Brennan started with pleasantries. How unfortunate the situation. How everyone wanted what was best for the patient. How surely they could find a reasonable resolution. Torres cut him off. "Let's be clear about what happened. Your chief resident ordered my client to leave a trauma bay while she was trying to provide life-saving care to a senior military officer. When she refused and performed an emergency procedure that saved the patient's life, your staff attempted to have her arrested. Then your administration tried to coerce her into signing a false confession under threat of criminal prosecution." Torres smiled. "Does that about cover it?" The lead hospital lawyer, a woman named Kincaid, didn't flinch. "Ms. Vasquez performed a surgical procedure without physician oversight or authorization. That's a violation of—" "Major Vasquez," Torres corrected. "And she performed emergency field medicine under combat medical protocols, which she is certified to do under federal law. The Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act is very clear about this. She's not active duty. She's a retired service member with ongoing medical certifications maintained through the VA. Her credentials are federal, not state-regulated." Torres slid a document across the table. "This is her military medical certification. Still valid, still recognized. She had every legal right to perform that procedure." Kincaid's jaw tightened. "Even if that's true, and we dispute that interpretation, she directly contradicted the attending physician's treatment plan. That's insubordination. That's saving a man's life when the attending physician was about to kill him through incompetence." General Brandt's voice was quiet, but it filled the room like thunder. "Your doctor wanted to sedate a stroking patient. My medical experts have reviewed the case. Every single one agrees that Dr. Cross's treatment plan would have resulted in Colonel Whitmore's death within minutes." Brennan raised his hands. "Gentlemen, ladies, let's not make this adversarial. We're all on the same side here." "Are we?" The JAG lieutenant colonel spoke for the first time. His nameplate read Morrison. "Because, from where I'm sitting, your institution attempted to destroy the career of a decorated combat veteran for doing exactly what she was trained to do, save lives. We had protocols. Your protocols nearly killed a United States Air Force colonel." Morrison leaned forward. "And then your staff tried to cover it up. That's not a civil matter anymore. That's federal obstruction of justice." The room went cold. Kincaid recovered first. "You're overreaching. This is a state medical issue, not a federal. The patient is military. The witness is military. The incident occurred during the provision of care to a federal employee." Morrison smiled. It was not a nice smile. "That makes it our jurisdiction, counselor, and we take a very dim view of anyone who threatens or intimidates our people." Brennan's carefully maintained calm cracked. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you how this is going to proceed." Morrison pulled out his own documents. "The Air Force Office of Special Investigations has opened a formal inquiry into this facility's handling of Colonel Whitmore's care and the subsequent treatment of Major Vasquez. That investigation will examine every decision made, every statement given, every action taken by your staff. If we find evidence of criminal wrongdoing, and I suspect we will prosecute." "You can't just—" "We can. We are. It's already happening." Morrison looked at Brennan. "You have a choice. Cooperate fully, terminate the individuals responsible, and implement immediate corrective actions. Or fight us and watch your facility become a case study in how not to handle military patients. Silence filled the room like poison gas. Kincaid tried again. Even if we agree to an internal review, Major Vasquez's actions still violated hospital policy. We can't simply ignore. You're not ignoring anything, Torres said. You're recognizing that your policies failed catastrophically, that a veteran saved a life your staff was about to lose, and that attempting to punish her for it was morally bankrupt and legally indefensible. What do you want? Brennan's voice had lost its polish. Torres glanced at Elena, then back to the CEO. Full exoneration, written apology, restoration of Major Vasquez's position with back pay for any missed shifts, termination of Dr. Cross and any supervisor who participated in the coercion attempt, implementation of new protocols for recognizing military medical credentials, and a formal commendation in her personnel file. That's excessive. That's baseline. General Brandt stood. And if you think we're being unreasonable, consider what the alternative looks like. Criminal charges against your staff, federal investigation of your facility, media coverage of how a decorated war hero was humiliated and threatened for saving a colonel's life. He buttoned his jacket. How do you think that plays in Clearwater Heights, Mr. Brennan? This is a military town. Half your donors are veterans. How long does your hospital survive that story? Brennan looked at his lawyers, at his chief of staff, at the insurance representative who was carefully studying the table. We need time to discuss this internally. You have 24 hours, Morrison said. After that, our investigation proceeds without your cooperation, and whatever we find becomes public record. The meeting ended. Elena walked out, flanked by Torres and Brandt, her knee aching, her mind spinning. In the elevator, Torres exhaled. That went better than expected. They're going to fold, Brandt said. They have no choice. Cross is a liability they can't defend, and they know it. Elena found her voice. What happens to the nurses, the ones who were there, who saw everything? They'll be interviewed. Most of them will corroborate your account. A few might lie to protect themselves. Torres looked at her. You need to prepare for that. Not everyone will be on your side. Elena nodded slowly. She'd known that already. She'd seen the way some of the nurses had looked at her in the trauma bay. The mix of awe and resentment, the knowledge that she'd done something they couldn't or wouldn't do, and the discomfort that came with that truth. They took her back to the hotel. More waiting. More silence. The afternoon bled into evening. At 7:23 p.m., Torres called. Hospital just sent over a preliminary agreement. They're caving on almost everything. Cross is being terminated effective immediately. They want you to come back for a meeting tomorrow to finalize terms. What about the criminal investigation? That's separate. Still proceeding, but the hospital is distancing itself from Cross as fast as legally possible. Torres paused. Elena, this is good. This is everything we asked for. It doesn't feel like victory. It never does. Not at first. Torres's voice softened. Get some rest. Tomorrow we finish this. Elena ended the call and sat in the dark hotel room, watching the city lights through the window. Somewhere out there, Nathan Cross was having the worst day of his life. Somewhere out there, nurses who'd watched her be humiliated were trying to decide what they'd say when investigators asked what they'd seen. And somewhere Colonel Whitmore was breathing because she'd refused to walk away. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Patricia, from Trauma 1. I told them everything. What he did to you. What he almost did to the colonel. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. Elena stared at the message for a long time before responding. Thank you. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. You were right. About the airway. About everything. I've been doing this 20 years and I froze. You didn't. That matters. Elena set the phone down and closed her eyes. The next morning arrived with rain. Elena dressed carefully. The same clothes, the same shoes, the same armor of normalcy. Torres picked her up at 9. The hospital looked different in daylight. Smaller somehow. Less intimidating. They walked through the ER entrance, past security, past the nurses' station where the night shift was ending and the day shift beginning. Conversation stopped as Elena passed. Some of the staff looked away, some nodded. One nurse, a young woman Elena barely knew, mouthed "thank you" as she walked by. The conference room held fewer people this time. Brennan, Kincaid, the chief of staff, and a man Elena didn't recognize, older, wearing a navy suit and an expression of deep weariness. Major Vasquez. Brennan's voice was different now, stripped of pretense. "This is Arthur Hensley, chairman of our hospital board. He's asked to speak with you directly." Hensley stood, extended his hand. Elena shook it. "I owe you an apology," Hensley said. "Multiple apologies. For what happened to you in that trauma bay, for how our staff treated you, for how our administration tried to make you the villain when you saved a man's life." He gestured to a chair. "Please sit." Elena sat, Torres beside her. Hensley opened a folder. "We've completed our internal review. Dr. Cross has been terminated and will face formal disciplinary action from the State Medical Board. We've suspended 3 supervisors who were involved in the attempt to coerce your resignation. We're implementing new protocols for recognizing military medical credentials and ensuring that veteran medical professionals are properly respected and utilized." He slid papers across the table. "This is a formal letter of apology and exoneration. Full restoration of your position, back pay for missed shifts, and a commendation for your actions in saving Colonel Whitmore's life. Additionally, we're offering you a position on our Trauma Protocol Review Committee and a significant raise." Elena looked at the documents. Everything Torres had demanded, everything she'd been told she couldn't have. "There's one more thing," Hensley said quietly. "The nurses who were present in Trauma 1 have asked to speak with you. They've written statements, submitted testimony, and several of them have specifically requested the opportunity to apologize personally. Would you be willing to meet with them?" Elena looked at Torres, who nodded slightly. "Yes," Elena said. They gathered in a smaller conference room. 8 nurses, ranging from veterans to recent graduates. Patricia was there. Sarah from the ICU. Others Elena recognized from that night. Patricia spoke first. "We failed you. We watched Cross humiliate you for months, and we said nothing. We saw you save that man's life, and we let them drag you out like you'd committed a crime." Her voice broke. "I've been a nurse for 22 years. I've never been more ashamed." "I watched you perform that crick," another nurse said, younger, maybe 30. "I've never seen anything like it. The precision, the confidence. And all I could think was, we should have listened to you from the beginning." One by one, they spoke. Apologies, confessions. The slow unraveling of a culture that had allowed someone like Nathan Cross to terrorize them all into silence. "He made us afraid," Sarah said. "Afraid of being wrong. Afraid of speaking up. Afraid of being the next target." She looked at Elena. "You weren't afraid. Even when you should have been. That's what I'm taking from this. That's what I'm going to remember." When they finished, Elena stood. Her knee hurt less today. Or maybe she just noticed it less. "I don't blame any of you," she said. "I know what it's like to work under someone who uses fear as a weapon. I know how it feels to choose silence because speaking up might cost everything." She paused. "But we can't let it happen again. Not to each other, not to patients. We're supposed to be the ones who stand between people and death. That only works if we're willing to stand." Patricia nodded. "We will. I promise you, we will." The meeting ended. Elena walked out feeling lighter than she had in months. In the hallway, she nearly collided with a man in scrubs. He stepped back, startled, and she saw his face. It was the resident who'd been in the break room with Cross that night, the one who'd questioned whether Elena was competent. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he spoke quietly. "I'm sorry for what I said, for what I didn't say." He swallowed hard. "I'm leaving the program. After what happened, after seeing what Cross really was, I can't stay here." "That's your choice," Elena said. "But don't leave because of guilt. Leave because you learned something and want to be better." He nodded slowly and walked away. Torres was waiting by the elevator. "You ready to go?" "Not yet." Elena turned toward the ICU. "I need to check on someone first." Colonel Whitmore was sitting up when she arrived, oxygen off, color better. He smiled when he saw her. "Major, they're springing me tomorrow, heading to Walter Reed for follow-up, probably desk duty for 6 months." He grimaced. "I hate desk duty." "Better than the alternative." "Significantly." He studied her face. "Howard told me about the meeting, said the hospital rolled over like a trained dog." "They did what they had to do. They did what they should have done from the beginning, recognize value when they see it." Whitmore's expression turned serious. "I also heard you're going back to work here. Are you sure, after everything?" Elena considered the question. The hospital where she'd been mocked, humiliated, nearly destroyed. The place that had taken everything she'd tried to rebuild and crushed it. "Yes," she said. "I'm sure." "Why?" "Because walking away would mean they won. And I didn't survive 3 deployments and a medical retirement to let a bully in a white coat decide my worth." She met his eyes. "Also, someone needs to make sure the next nurse doesn't get treated like garbage for being good at their job." Whitmore laughed, then winced. "Fair enough. Well, when you inevitably get promoted to Director of Emergency Services or whatever they try to offer you to save face, remember, good leaders make hard decisions. Great leaders make sure no one has to make those decisions alone." "I'll remember." She left him there, healing and whole, and walked back through the hospital that had tried to break her. Staff nodded as she passed, some with respect, some with curiosity, some with the wary acknowledgement of people who'd backed the wrong side and knew it. Elena didn't smile, didn't wave, just walked steady, her limp barely noticeable now, her shoulders straight. In the parking garage, Torres was waiting by a car. "General Brandt wanted you to know the federal investigation is moving forward. They've got enough for criminal charges against Cross, assault, obstruction, witness intimidation. He's looking at real time." "Good." Torres tilted her head. "You know, most people would be angry, vengeful. You're just calm." "I've seen what vengeance looks like. It's exhausting and it doesn't heal anything." Elena unlocked her car. "Justice is enough. Making sure it doesn't happen to someone else is enough." "You really believe that?" Elena paused, one hand on the car door. "I believe that I was trained to run toward danger when everyone else runs away. I believe I took an oath that didn't come with an expiration date. And I believe that Nathan Cross is about to learn what happens when you mistake quiet for weak." She climbed into her car and started the engine. 3 days later, Elena received a certified letter. State Medical Board, formal complaint filed by Nathan Cross alleging professional misconduct and unlicensed practice of medicine. She called Torres immediately. "Let him file." Torres sounded almost cheerful. "He's digging his own grave. Every complaint he makes just gives us more documentation of his incompetence and vindictiveness. Plus, he's filing this while under federal investigation for assault. It makes him look desperate." "Will I need to appear?" "Probably, but when you do, you'll have full military support, complete documentation, and about 15 witnesses who will testify that you saved a life his incompetence nearly ended." Torres paused. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay." And surprisingly, Elena meant it. She went back to work the following Monday. Night shift, same schedule, same ER. But nothing else was the same. The staff treated her differently, carefully, with a respect that bordered on reverence and made her vaguely uncomfortable. The new chief resident, a woman transferred from another hospital, introduced herself formally and asked if Elena had any concerns about protocols or staffing. "Just one," Elena said. "Don't ever tell a nurse to shut up when they're trying to save a patient." Noted? Permanently. The shift was busy. Car accident, domestic violence case, elderly man with chest pain, normal emergencies, the kind Elena could handle in her sleep. At 2 a.m., a familiar face appeared in the ER. General Brandt, still in uniform, carrying a folder. "Couldn't sleep?" Elena asked. "Had a briefing at the base. Thought I'd stop by." He handed her the folder. "This is for you, from Jim Whitmore. He wanted you to have it." Elena opened it. Inside was a letter of commendation, official Air Force letterhead, signed by Whitmore and countersigned by Brandt, for extraordinary valor and medical expertise in the preservation of life under adverse conditions. Major Elena Vasquez demonstrated the highest standards of military professionalism and medical competence, saving the life of a senior officer through decisive action and superior skill. Her actions reflect great credit upon herself and the United States Air Force. There was more. A citation for her personnel file, a recommendation for the Airman's Medal, documentation that would follow her, officially and permanently, for the rest of her career. "He doesn't do half measures," Brandt said. "Neither do I. You earned this, Elena, every word of it." She held the papers, feeling their weight. "I was just doing my job." "You were doing what you were trained to do, what you were built to do, in a place that tried to convince you that you weren't enough." Brandt's voice was firm. "Don't diminish that. Own it." He left her standing in the hallway, holding proof that she was exactly who she'd always been. Not despite the limp, not despite the fear, but because of what she'd done when it mattered most. The rest of the shift passed in controlled chaos. Near dawn, as the sky outside began to lighten, Elena stepped outside for air. The ambulance bay was quiet. City sounds filtered in from the distance. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. "This is Dr. Morrison." "Jag. Wanted to update you. Cross's medical license was suspended this morning pending board review. Criminal trial date set for May. You'll need to testify, but we've got him cold. He's done." Elena read the message twice, then looked up at the emerging sunrise painting Clearwater Heights in shades of gold and amber. Done, finished, over. Somewhere, Nathan Cross was waking up to a world where his cruelty had finally caught up with him. And Elena Vasquez was standing in the place where she'd been told she didn't belong, watching the dawn, ready for whatever came next. Her shift ended at 7. She changed, grabbed her bag, walked to the parking garage. Her car was where she'd left it, covered in morning dew. As she reached for the door handle, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. A woman stood there, mid-40s, expensive suit, briefcase, expression of cool assessment. "Major Vasquez, my name is Dr. Catherine Reeves. I'm the new chief of emergency medicine. Just started this week. Could we talk?" Elena's hand stayed on the car door, but she didn't open it. The morning air was cold enough to make her breath visible, and Dr. Catherine Reeves stood perfectly still in the parking garage's dim light, waiting with the patience of someone who knew how to get what she wanted. "I'm listening," Elena said. Reeves gestured to a bench near the elevator bank. They sat, and Elena noticed the details. The woman's shoes were practical but expensive, her briefcase worn at the corners from actual use, and her eyes had the particular sharpness of someone who'd worked too many nights to count. "I read your file," Reeves said. "All of it. Military service record, medical retirement documentation, employment history. Also read the incident reports from Colonel Whitmore's case. Every statement, every witness account, every second of security footage." She paused. "You performed a combat cricothyroidotomy in 90 seconds under hostile conditions. That's impressive." "It was necessary." Necessary and impressive aren't mutually exclusive." Reeves opened her briefcase, pulled out a tablet. "I also reviewed 18 months of your shift reports. You know what I found? 0 medication errors, 0 documentation failures, 0 patient complaints. Your IV success rate is 94%, which is 6 points above the departmental average. Your triage assessments are textbook perfect." Elena said nothing. "So I had to ask myself, why was someone with your skill set assigned to minor care? Why was a decorated combat medic stuck doing laceration repairs and URI discharges?" Reeves turned the tablet toward Elena. "Then I found the emails. 3 months of correspondence between Nathan Cross and the previous chief of emergency medicine. Want to know what they said about you?" Elena's jaw tightened. "Not particularly." "They called you damaged goods, said you were unreliable because of your disability, suggested you were a liability risk because of suspected PTSD. Reeves's voice went cold. "They systematically marginalized you based on assumptions and prejudice, and they documented it in writing like idiots." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm not them. Because I got hired to clean up a department that's been rotting from the inside for years. And because I need people who actually know what they're doing." Reeves closed the tablet. "I want you on days. Trauma team. Full clinical privileges. You'll be working the critical cases, training residents, and helping me rebuild protocols that won't get patients killed. Elena stared at her. You're offering me a promotion. I'm offering you the job you should have had from the beginning. Reeves leaned back. But I need to know. Are you staying for the right reasons? Because if you're staying for revenge, or to prove a point, or because you're too stubborn to walk away from a fight, I can't use you. This department needs healers, not warriors with scores to settle. The question landed like a physical weight. Elena looked past Reeves, past the concrete pillars and parked cars, to the hospital entrance where the night shift was trickling out and the day shift flowing in. Nurses, techs, doctors, people who'd seen her humiliated, and people who'd defended her, and people who still weren't sure what to think. I stayed because someone needed to, Elena said quietly. Because if I walked away, the next nurse with a limp or a scar or a history would get the same treatment. Because fixing broken systems matters more than protecting my feelings. She met Reeves's eyes. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because this is where I'm supposed to be. Reeves smiled. It was small and genuine. Good answer. Start Monday. Day shift, 7 to 7. We'll discuss salary and benefits tomorrow, but you're looking at a 30% increase plus differential. She stood, extended her hand. Welcome to the team, Major. Elena shook it, feeling the calluses that marked another person who'd worked with her hands. Reeves walked away, leaving Elena alone in the garage with the weight of a decision that felt both inevitable and impossible. She drove home through morning traffic, her mind racing. The apartment she rented was small and anonymous, the kind of place that felt temporary even after 18 months. She showered, tried to sleep, and gave up after 40 minutes of staring at the ceiling. At noon, her phone rang. Captain Torres. You sound awake, Torres said. Good. We need to talk about the medical board hearing. It's scheduled for next week. Elena sat up, suddenly alert. That fast? Cross is pushing for it. His lawyer thinks they can paint you as a rogue nurse who exceeded her authority. They're betting the board won't understand military medical protocols. Torres paused. They're betting wrong, but we need to be prepared. They spent 2 hours going over testimony. What questions to expect, how to answer without sounding defensive. The technical details of combat medical certification versus civilian nursing licensure. Torres was thorough to the point of exhausting. One more thing, Torres said as they were finishing. The board is going to ask why you didn't report Cross earlier, why you tolerated his behavior for so long. You need a good answer. What's a good answer? The truth, but delivered in a way that doesn't make you sound weak or passive. Elena thought about that long after the call ended. Why hadn't she reported him? Why had she accepted the insults, the relegation to minor care, the systematic erosion of her professional dignity? Because she'd been broken once, and she was terrified of breaking again. Because after losing her knee and her career and her sense of purpose, she'd been willing to accept anything that felt like stability. Because sometimes survival meant making yourself small enough to avoid notice. The truth, but not weak. She spent the weekend preparing, running through scenarios, reviewing her own records. Sunday evening, General Brandt called. Heard about the board hearing, he said without preamble. Want some company? Sir, you don't need to. I'm not asking permission, Major. I'm telling you I'll be there. Jim, too, if his doctors clear him. Brandt's voice softened slightly. You walked into fire for one of ours. We don't forget that. The hearing was held in a sterile conference room in the State Medical Building downtown. The board consisted of 5 members, 3 physicians, 1 nurse practitioner, 1 public representative. They sat behind a raised table like judges, their expressions professionally neutral. Nathan Cross sat on the opposite side of the room with his lawyer, a sharp-eyed man named Dennison, who wore a suit that cost more than Elena's car. Cross looked diminished somehow, his usual arrogance replaced by something brittle and desperate. He didn't look at Elena. Torres sat beside her, calm and ready. Behind them, in the public gallery, sat General Brandt in full-dress uniform, Colonel Whitmore against medical advice, and Patricia from the trauma unit. The message was clear. The board chair, a gray-haired physician named Dr. Warren, called the hearing to order. We're here to review a complaint filed by Dr. Nathan Cross against Elena Vasquez, RN, alleging professional misconduct and unlicensed practice of medicine. Warren looked at Elena over his reading glasses. Ms. Vasquez, do you understand the charges? Yes, sir. And it's Major Vasquez. Dennison stood immediately. Objection. Military rank is irrelevant to civilian medical licensing. It's relevant to my credentials and training, Elena said evenly. Which is the entire basis of this complaint. Warren nodded. Noted. Please continue, Major Vasquez. Dennison launched into his opening statement. He painted Elena as a rogue actor who'd violated hospital protocol, overridden physician authority, and performed a dangerous procedure without proper authorization. He used words like reckless and dangerous and exceeded her scope of practice. He was good. Elena could see the board members taking notes, their faces thoughtful. Then Torres stood. Members of the board, let's be clear about what actually happened. A patient was dying. The attending physician was about to administer treatment that would have killed him faster. Major Vasquez, a decorated combat veteran with federal medical credentials that supersede state nursing licenses, performed an emergency airway procedure that saved the patient's life. Torres pulled out a document. This is the legal opinion from the Department of Defense Office of General Counsel. It confirms that Major Vasquez's military medical certifications gave her both the legal authority and professional obligation to perform that procedure. Dennison objected. The board discussed. Warren eventually ruled the document admissible. The questioning began. They asked Elena to describe her training. She outlined 16 years of military medical service, 3 combat deployments, advanced certifications in tactical combat casualty care, and emergency field medicine. She spoke clearly and without emotion, letting the facts carry the weight. They asked about the night in question. She walked through every decision, every observation, every second of the 2 minutes between entering the trauma bay and saving Colonel Whitmore's life. Why did you disobey Dr. Cross's order to leave? One board member asked. Because I took an oath to do no harm. Leaving would have caused harm. Staying prevented it. But you're a nurse, not a physician. Shouldn't you defer to... In a normal situation, yes. In a situation where the physician's treatment plan is actively killing the patient, no. Elena leaned forward. I've performed that exact procedure 43 times in combat. I recognized the signs of airway compromise and posterior circulation stroke that Dr. Cross missed. I knew I could save that man, so I did. Dennison tried to trip her up, asked about hospital policy, chain of command, whether she thought she was above the rules. I don't think I'm above the rules, Elena said. I think the rules exist to protect patients, not egos. When those two things conflict, I choose patience. They broke for lunch. Elena stepped outside, her knee aching from sitting still too long. Brant and Whitmore joined her on the steps of the medical building. You're doing well, Brant said. They haven't decided anything yet. They will. And they'll decide right. Whitmore shifted his weight, still recovering. Dennison's trying to make this about authority, but it's about competence. Everyone in that room knows it. They reconvened an hour later. Dennison called his first witness, a physician from another hospital who testified about the importance of hierarchical medical structures and the dangers of nurses overriding physician decisions. Torres cross-examined ruthlessly. Doctor, have you ever worked in combat medicine? No. Have you ever performed emergency field procedures under fire? No. Have you ever been in a situation where following standard protocol would result in a patient's death? The doctor hesitated. That's not a fair question. It's the only question that matters. Torres turned to the board. This witness has no relevant experience to evaluate Major Vasquez's actions in a crisis situation that more closely resembled a battlefield than a civilian ER. Next witness was a nurse manager from Mercy General who testified about Elena's difficulty following directions and history of isolation from team activities. Patricia stood up in the gallery. That's a lie. Warren banged his gavel. Ma'am, you're not recognized. Then recognize me. Patricia walked forward. I'm Patricia Chen, trauma nurse at Mercy General for 22 years. I was there that night. I saw everything. She looked at the nurse manager. You want to talk about Elena's history? She was isolated because Nathan Cross systematically bullied and marginalized her for 18 months. She kept to herself because speaking up got you humiliated. And the only reason she's sitting here now is because she had the courage to do what the rest of us were too afraid to do, stand up to him. Warren's gavel came down again. Ms. Chen, I understand your passion, but this is not the time. When is the time? Patricia's voice cracked. When do we tell the truth about what happened in that hospital? That we let a doctor terrorize staff and endanger patients because it was easier than fighting back? That Elena Vasquez saved a man's life and we tried to destroy her for it? Security moved toward Patricia. Brant stood. If you remove that nurse, you remove me, Brant said quietly. And I'm a 3-star general who's very interested in what this board decides about one of my officers. Warren looked between them, clearly calculating. Ms. Chen, if you want to testify, we'll hear you, but you'll do it properly, under oath. Patricia was sworn in. She testified for 40 minutes. Every detail of Cross's abuse, every instance of Elena being dismissed, mocked, relegated to the margins, the culture of fear that had infected the ER. And finally, the night Elena walked back into that trauma bay knowing it would cost her everything. She didn't hesitate, Patricia said. She saw what needed to be done, and she did it. That's not recklessness. That's heroism. Dennison tried to discredit her, suggested she was biased, emotionally compromised, motivated by guilt. You're right about the guilt, Patricia said. I'm ashamed I didn't speak up sooner. I'm ashamed I let her stand alone. But I'm not lying. Every word I've said is true, and you know it. More witnesses followed. Sarah from ICU testified about Elena's competence. A paramedic who'd transported Whitmore testified about the professional quality of the cricothyroidotomy. A physician from the Air Force Medical Service testified about military medical protocols and Elena's certifications. Cross never took the stand. His lawyer advised against it. By late afternoon, both sides rested. The board deliberated for 90 minutes while Elena waited in the hallway, Torres beside her, Brant and Whitmore standing guard like sentinels. Whatever happens, Torres said quietly, you did everything right. It doesn't always matter. It matters more than you think. The board called them back in. Elena walked on her bad knee, feeling every step, and sat down facing the 5 people who would decide whether she kept her license. Dr. Warren cleared his throat. This board has reviewed all evidence and testimony presented. We've considered the complaint, the response, and the unique circumstances of this case. He paused. Major Vasquez, your actions on the night in question were highly irregular. They violated hospital protocol and chain of command. Under normal circumstances, those violations would warrant serious disciplinary action. Elena's hands were steady in her lap. However, these were not normal circumstances. The evidence clearly shows that Dr. Cross's treatment plan was inappropriate and would likely have resulted in patient death. Your intervention, while unorthodox, was medically sound and ultimately life-saving. Warren looked directly at her. This board finds no professional misconduct. The complaint is dismissed. The room exhaled as one. Furthermore, Warren continued, we are issuing a formal recommendation to the State Nursing Board that military medical credentials be given greater recognition and weight in emergency situations. What happened to you, Major Vasquez, should never happen to any veteran medical professional serving in civilian healthcare. Dennison stood. The board's decision is final, Warren said. This hearing is concluded. Elena stood on legs that suddenly felt unsteady. Torres was smiling. Behind her, she could hear Brant and Whitmore talking in low, satisfied tones. Cross remained seated, staring at nothing, his lawyer packing up papers with sharp, angry movements. Elena turned to leave and found herself face to face with him in the aisle. They stood there for a moment, separated by 3 feet and a gulf of consequences. This isn't over, Cross said quietly. You think you've won, but all you've done is make yourself a target. Every mistake you make, every patient you lose, every bad outcome, I'll be watching, waiting. Elena looked at him, really looked, at the fear masquerading as threat, the desperation hiding behind bravado. No, you won't, she said, because you'll be too busy defending yourself in criminal court, too busy explaining to investigators why you put your hands on a veteran to stop her from saving a life, too busy watching your career burn down around you to worry about mine. She walked past him without another word. Outside, the late afternoon sun was breaking through clouds. Brant and Whitmore stood on the steps, waiting. "Congratulations, Major," Brant said. "Thank you, sir." Whitmore extended his hand. "Patricia Chen is a hell of a witness. Remind me to send her something nice." She didn't do it for a gift. No, she did it because it was right, like you. Whitmore squeezed her hand once and released it. "What's next?" "I start my new position Monday, day shift trauma." "Good. The ER needs you." He started down the steps, then paused. "One more thing. Cross threatened you in there. Made it sound like he's planning something. Watch your back." Elena nodded, but she wasn't worried. Cross was finished. The criminal trial would destroy whatever remained of his career, and everyone knew it. What she didn't know was that Cross was more desperate than she'd realized. That night, as Elena was packing for the early shift Monday, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, then answered. "Major Vasquez?" A woman's voice shaking. "This is Dr. Rachel Kim. I was a resident under Nathan Cross. I need to talk to you, now. It's urgent." "About what?" "About what he's planning. About the lawsuit he's filing. About the evidence he claims to have that you falsified your military records." Elena went cold. "What evidence?" "I don't know if it's real, but he's got documents, or says he does, and he's going to the media with it tomorrow. Unless..." Kim's voice broke. "Unless I testify that I saw you make mistakes, that I witnessed incompetence. He's threatening my career, my reputation, everything." "Where are you?" "Coffee shop on Market Street. Please, I don't know what to do." Elena grabbed her keys. "I'm on my way. Don't talk to anyone else." She called Torres while driving, explaining the situation in short bursts between traffic lights. "It's a setup," Torres said immediately. "Cross is trying to create leverage. Don't go alone." She sounded terrified. "She's supposed to. That's how these things work." Torres was already typing. "I'm sending security, military police. Give me the address." Elena gave it, but she was already pulling into the parking lot. The coffee shop was small, dimly lit, nearly empty at 8 p.m. on a Sunday night. Dr. Kim sat in a corner booth, young and exhausted, a tablet on the table in front of her. Elena slid into the seat across from her. "Show me what he has." Kim turned the tablet around. Documents filled the screen. Military service records, medical certifications, deployment orders. But the dates were wrong. The signatures didn't match. The whole thing looked authentic at first glance and fell apart under scrutiny. "These are forgeries," Elena said. "I know, but they're good forgeries, and Cross has a media contact ready to run with the story that you faked your military service to avoid prosecution." Kim's hand shook. He said, "If I don't back him up, if I don't give a statement saying I witnessed you falsifying records, he'll release these and claim I helped you do it. You're a resident. You'd have no access to my military files." He doesn't care about logic. He cares about creating enough smoke that people assume fire. Kim looked up, eyes red. "I came to you because I can't do this anymore. I can't lie for him. I can't be part of this. But I don't know how to stop him." Elena heard the door chime, turned, saw 2 MPs entering, their expressions alert and focused. Torres must have sent them immediately. "You already stopped him," Elena said quietly, "by coming to me, by refusing to play along." "But the documents are evidence of forgery and fraud, federal crimes. You just handed us everything we need." Elena gestured to the MPs. "These officers are going to take your statement. You're going to tell them everything Cross said, everything he threatened, everything he planned, and then you're going to be protected." Kim started crying. Relief or fear, or both. The MPS took her statement, photographed the forged documents, and secured Kim in protective custody. Elena called Torres from the parking lot. "We've got him," Torres said. "Forgery of military documents is a federal felony. Add it to the assault, obstruction, and witness intimidation charges, and Cross is looking at serious prison time. When do they arrest him?" "Tonight. Right now. Federal agents are already en route to his location." Torres paused. "Elena, you need to understand what almost happened. If Kim had backed his play, if those documents had gone public before we could debunk them, your career would have been destroyed regardless of the truth. The accusation alone would have been enough." Elena leaned against her car, suddenly exhausted. But she didn't, and they won't. No, they won't, because you've got people willing to stand with you. Remember that. She drove home through quiet streets, her mind still racing. Somewhere in the city, federal agents were arresting Nathan Cross. Somewhere, Dr. Kim was giving a full statement that would seal his fate. Somewhere, the machinery of justice was grinding forward with the inevitability of consequence. Elena slept poorly, waking every few hours to check her phone. At 3 a.m., Torres sent a text. Cross in federal custody. Bail hearing tomorrow. He's done. At 6 a.m., Elena's phone rang. Dr. Reeves, I heard about last night. Are you okay? I'm fine. Good. Because I need you to come in early. We've got a situation. Elena's stomach dropped. What kind of situation? The kind where every major news outlet in the state is camped outside the hospital, demanding a statement about the decorated war hero who saved a colonel's life and then got attacked by a disgraced doctor. Reeves's voice was dry. Also the kind where the hospital board wants to give you a commendation and a raise and possibly rename a wing after you. I don't want a wing. I told them that, but you're coming in anyway because we're doing this right. Press conference, formal statement, clean ending. Reeves paused. You don't get to stay invisible anymore, Elena. The world knows who you are now. Time to own it. Elena arrived at the hospital at 7 to find the parking lot full of news vans. Reporters clustered near the entrance, cameras ready, questions shouted toward anyone in scrubs. Security escorted her through a side entrance. Dr. Reeves waited in the administrative wing, along with hospital CEO Brennan, board chairman Hensley, and a press coordinator who looked like she'd been up all night. Here's the plan, Reeves said. Brief statement from the hospital accepting responsibility for mishandling the situation. Formal apology to you. Announcement of new protocols. Then you say a few words, short, professional, focused on patient care. No drama. No attacks on Cross. Just facts. I'm not good at public speaking. You're a combat veteran who performed surgery in a war zone. You can handle 20 reporters. Reeves smiled slightly. Besides, you've got General Brandt standing behind you. That tends to make people behave. The press conference was held in a small auditorium normally used for medical education. Every seat filled. Cameras everywhere. Elena stood at a podium flanked by Brandt in dress uniform and Reeves in her white coat. Brennan went first, reading from prepared remarks about the hospital's commitment to excellence and respect for veteran healthcare workers. Hensley followed with the formal apology and announcement of policy changes. Then it was Elena's turn. She stepped to the microphone, looked out at the sea of faces and cameras, and spoke. My name is Elena Vasquez. I'm a registered nurse and a retired Air Force major. On the night of March 15th, I performed an emergency airway procedure that saved a patient's life. I did it because I was trained to do it, because the patient needed it, and because my oath as a medical professional required it. She paused. I'm grateful to the people who stood with me when it mattered, to the nurses who told the truth, to the military officers who ensured justice was served, to everyone who believed that doing the right thing should matter more than protecting institutional reputation. Questions erupted. She answered 3 before Reeves stepped in and ended the conference. Afterward, in the quiet of Reeves's office, Elena collapsed into a chair. That was exhausting. That was necessary. Reeves poured 2 cups of coffee, handed one over. You're going to be recognized everywhere now. Patients will ask for you specifically. Medical students will want to train under you. You've become a symbol. I don't want to be a symbol. I want to be a nurse. Then be a nurse. But understand that you're also proof that the system can work when people have the courage to make it work. Reeves sat across from her. Now go home. Get some rest. Your first day as a trauma nurse starts tomorrow, and I need you sharp. Elena left through the parking garage, avoiding the remaining reporters. Her phone buzzed constantly, messages from colleagues, former military friends, people she hadn't spoken to in years. One text stood out. From Colonel Whitmore. Saw the press conference. You did good. Now stop doubting yourself and be the leader I know you are. She read it twice, then drove home through midday traffic, her mind already moving forward to Monday, to the trauma bay where she'd be working alongside the nurses who'd defended her, in the hospital that had tried to break her and failed. At a stoplight, she caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. The same gray-streaked hair, the same lines around her eyes, the same face that had looked back at her for 52 years. But different somehow. Harder. Clearer. Like something had crystallized in the heat and pressure of the past weeks. Her phone rang again. This time, an unknown number with a federal area code. She answered. Major Vasquez, this is Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. We need to discuss Dr. Nathan Cross and some additional evidence that's come to light. Can you come downtown tomorrow morning? Elena's hand tightened on the steering wheel. What kind of evidence? The kind that suggests Cross wasn't working alone. The kind that indicates a broader conspiracy to suppress veteran medical professionals across multiple hospitals. Chen's voice was professional, unyielding. We believe you were targeted not just by Cross, but by a coordinated effort to limit military medical credentials in civilian settings. And we need your help to prove it. The light turned green, but Elena didn't move. Behind her, someone honked. I'll be there, she said. What time? 9 a.m., Federal Building, downtown. And Major Vasquez, be prepared. This is bigger than anyone thought. The call ended, and Elena sat at the green light until 3 cars behind her laid on their horns in unison. She drove forward mechanically, her mind already downtown in a federal building she'd never seen, talking to agents about conspiracies she hadn't known existed. Bigger than anyone thought. The words echoed through the rest of her drive home. She parked, climbed the stairs to her apartment, and stood in the middle of her living room trying to process what Agent Chen had implied. Multiple hospitals, coordinated effort, systematic suppression of veteran medical credentials. Nathan Cross wasn't just a bully, he was a symptom. She pulled out her laptop and started searching. News articles about veteran nurses facing disciplinary action. Blog posts from former military medics describing hostile work environments in civilian hospitals. Forum discussions about credentials being questioned, experience dismissed. Military training treated as inferior to civilian education. The pattern was there once you knew to look for it. Her phone rang again. Torres. I just got a very interesting call from the FBI, Torres said. They want me present tomorrow when you give your statement. They also want copies of every document related to your case, emails, personnel files, witness statements, everything. Chen said Cross wasn't working alone. He wasn't. I've been digging since she called. There's a consulting firm called MedStaff Solutions that advises hospitals on liability reduction. They've been pushing a narrative that military medical professionals represent increased malpractice risk because they're trained for combat, not civilian care. Torres's voice tightened. Guess who hired MedStaff Solutions 18 months ago? Mercy General, along with 14 other hospitals in 5 states. And guess what happened at every single one of those facilities within 6 months of hiring them? Elena closed her eyes. Veteran medical staff were marginalized or terminated, pushed out, reassigned to low-priority positions, buried in documentation requirements, systematically excluded from critical care roles. Torres paused. Elena, you weren't paranoid. You were targeted, and so were hundreds of others. The apartment felt suddenly smaller. Elena walked to the window, looked out at the darkening city. Somewhere out there, other veterans were working night shifts in hospitals that didn't want them, limping through careers that should have been celebrated, hiding their service records like shameful secrets. What do they want from me tomorrow? Everything you can remember. Dates, conversations, policy changes, any documentation you kept. Torres hesitated. They're building a civil rights case, possibly RICO. This isn't just about Cross anymore. This is about proving systematic discrimination against an entire class of medical professionals. Elena spent the night going through 18 months of memories she'd tried to forget. The first day when Cross had looked at her personnel file and smirked. The gradual reassignment from trauma to minor care. The comments about her age, her limp, her inability to keep up. The way other staff had started avoiding her, treating her like contamination they didn't want to catch. She documented it all in a timeline, noting witnesses and specific incidents. By 3 a.m., she had 12 pages single-spaced. At 8:30 the next morning, Elena walked into the federal building downtown with Torres beside her. Security, metal detectors, elevators that opened onto floors marked only with numbers and letters. They were escorted to a conference room on the 8th floor where Agent Chen waited with 3 other people. Major Vasquez, thank you for coming. Chen was younger than Elena expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and the bearing of someone who didn't waste time. This is Special Agent Marcus Webb, Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Park, and Investigator David Reynolds from the Department of Veterans Affairs. They shook hands around the table. Reynolds looked like a veteran himself, close-cropped gray hair, steady gaze, the kind of stillness that came from seeing things that left marks. Before we begin, Park said, I want to be clear about what we're investigating. We have evidence suggesting a coordinated effort across multiple healthcare facilities to discriminate against veteran medical professionals. This effort was facilitated by a consulting firm that provided hospitals with risk assessment models deliberately biased against military-trained personnel. She pulled up a presentation on the screen behind her. Charts, statistics, a map of the United States with red dots marking hospital locations. MedStaff Solutions was founded 8 years ago by 3 former healthcare executives. Their pitch was simple: reduce liability by identifying high-risk employees and systematically moving them out of critical roles. They sold it as data-driven risk management. Park clicked to the next slide. What they actually did was create algorithms that flagged military medical credentials as predictive of malpractice claims. No basis in actual data, just prejudice wrapped in statistics. Elena stared at the map. 15 red dots, 15 hospitals. How many veterans? We've identified 217 cases across these facilities where veteran medical staff were terminated, demoted, or constructively discharged within 18 months of the hospital hiring MedStaff Solutions. Webb tapped his tablet. Major Vasquez, you're case number 43, but you're the first one who fought back successfully, the first one where the targeting became visible enough to prosecute. Why me? Because you saved a colonel's life in front of witnesses who couldn't be silenced. Because you had military advocates who knew how to escalate. Because you refused to disappear quietly. Chen leaned forward. Most of the others just left. Took settlements, signed NDAs, moved to smaller facilities, or left healthcare entirely. You didn't. Reynolds spoke for the first time. I've been investigating complaints from veteran medical professionals for 3 years. Every one of them described the same pattern: excellent performance reviews suddenly turning critical, minor mistakes being treated as major infractions, systematic exclusion from important cases, and always the suggestions that their military training made them unsuitable for civilian medicine. Nathan Cross, Elena said quietly. Was he part of this from the beginning? Cross was a useful idiot, Park said bluntly. MedStaff identified him as someone with both the authority and the personality to implement their recommendations without asking too many questions. They fed him talking points about liability and risk management. He ran with it because it fed his ego and gave him a target. Chen pulled up emails on the screen. Elena recognized Cross's name in the sender field, but the recipients were people she'd never heard of: consultants, administrators, legal advisors. One email stopped her cold. Subject: Ward follow-up. Vasquez continues to resist reassignment. Recommend increased documentation requirements and peer review. If that fails, consider engineering a high-visibility mistake we can use for termination. The limp and PTSD markers make her vulnerable to a fitness for duty challenge. The date was 4 months before Colonel Whitmore's emergency. They were planning to set you up, Webb said. Create a situation where you'd fail, then use that failure as justification for termination. Whitmore's stroke accelerated their timeline. Cross tried to use it opportunistically, but he moved too fast and too obviously. Elena's hands were steady on the table, but her voice wasn't. How many others did they do this to? We're still counting. Reynolds opened a folder. But I can tell you about a few. Marine Corps veteran, 20 years as a combat medic, fired from a trauma center in Ohio for failing to adapt to civilian protocols. Army flight nurse with 3 deployments, forced out of an ICU in Texas for personality conflicts with staff. Navy corpsman who'd earned a Bronze Star, terminated from an ER in Florida for exceeding scope of practice. Each case was the same. Excellent service records. Stellar performance until MedStaff Solutions arrived. Then systematic destruction. What do you need from me? Elena asked. Park slid a document across the table. Your testimony. A formal statement describing everything that happened to you at Mercy General. Dates, conversations, witnesses. We're building a pattern and practice case against MedStaff Solutions and every hospital that implemented their recommendations. What happens to the hospitals? Depends on how involved they were. Some genuinely believed they were reducing risk. Others knew exactly what they were doing. Park's expression hardened. Either way, they're going to pay civil penalties, consent decrees, mandatory policy changes, and individual liability for administrators who actively participated in the discrimination. Torres had been quiet, taking notes. Now she spoke. What about criminal charges? Cross is facing federal assault and obstruction charges. He'll plead out or go to trial, but either way, he's done. Webb pulled up another file. The executives at MedStaff Solutions are under investigation for conspiracy to violate civil rights. If we can prove they knowingly created discriminatory algorithms and marketed them as legitimate risk management, that's fraud. That's wire fraud if they used email. That's a RICO predicate if they did it systematically across state lines. How long will this take? Years, probably. But the first dominoes are already falling. Chen turned her tablet around. A news article loaded. The headline read, Consulting Firm Under Federal Investigation for Anti-Veteran Discrimination. The article was published 20 minutes ago. We're going public today, Park said. Press conference at 2 p.m. We're announcing the investigation, the scope, and the fact that we're seeking additional witnesses. By tonight, every hospital that used MedStaff Solutions will be scrambling to cover their tracks. Elena read the article twice. It named MedStaff Solutions. It mentioned Mercy General. It referenced her case without using her name. You'll be asked to speak, Park continued. Not required, but helpful. The more faces we can put on this, the harder it is for people to dismiss it as bureaucratic overreach. Elena looked at Torres, who nodded slightly. I'll do it, Elena said. They spent 3 hours going through her statement. Every detail, every incident. The timeline she'd created became an exhibit. The emails Torres had obtained became evidence. Patricia's testimony from the medical board hearing became part of the pattern. At 1:45 p.m., they moved to a different room, larger, set up for media. Cameras were already positioned. Reporters filled the seats. Elena stood backstage with Park and Agent Chen, watching through a gap in the curtain as the room filled. You don't have to do this, Chen said quietly. We have enough without your testimony. But it's better with it. Yes. Elena smoothed down her shirt, the same blue one she'd worn to the medical board hearing, because it felt like armor now. Her knee ached from standing, but she ignored it. Park went first, outlining the investigation in legal terms. Webb followed with specifics about MedStaff Solutions and their methodology. Then Reynolds talked about the impact on veteran medical professionals and the healthcare system. Then they called Elena. She walked to the podium on her bad knee, hearing the cameras click, seeing the lights, and spoke. My name is Elena Vasquez. I'm a registered nurse and a retired Air Force major. For 18 months, I worked at a hospital that systematically tried to destroy my career because I was a veteran. They didn't do it with obvious discrimination. They did it with performance reviews that contradicted reality, with assignments that underutilized my skills, with a culture that treated my military experience as a liability instead of an asset. She paused, letting the words settle. I stayed quiet because I thought the problem was me. I thought if I just worked harder, if I just proved myself enough times, they'd see my value. It took a life or death emergency to show me the truth, that the system was designed to fail me, that my silence was part of their strategy. The room was absolutely silent. I'm standing here today because I want every veteran working in healthcare to know you're not imagining it. You're not being too sensitive. If you're being pushed out, undermined, or told your military training doesn't count, it's not because you're inadequate. It's because someone decided veterans are inconvenient. Her voice hardened. And that ends now. Questions erupted. She answered 4 before Park stepped in and ended it. Afterward, in a quiet office away from the cameras, Elena sat down and let the adrenaline drain out of her. Torres appeared with coffee. That was good, strong. They're going to use that everywhere. I don't care about everywhere. I care about the veterans who'll see it and realize they're not alone. You gave them that. Torres checked her phone. Also, you've got 17 interview requests, a call from a senator's office, and 3 job offers from hospitals that apparently just discovered they value military experience. Elena closed her eyes. I just want to go back to work. You will. Tomorrow. Day shift trauma at Mercy General, remember? Torres smiled. Though I suspect you're going to have a very different experience than the last 18 months. The next morning, Elena arrived at Mercy General at 6:45 a.m. for the 7 o'clock shift. The parking garage felt different in daylight, less ominous, more ordinary. She took the elevator to the ER, swiped her badge, and walked through doors she'd entered hundreds of times. The day shift was already gathering. Nurses at the station looked up as she approached. The talking stopped. Then Patricia started clapping. 1 person became 2, became 10. The whole ER was applauding. Elena stood frozen, not sure what to do with her hands, until Dr. Reeves appeared and rescued her. Enough, Reeves said, but she was smiling. We have patients. Major Vasquez, with me. They walked to the trauma bay, the same room where Elena had saved Whitmore's life. The equipment had been updated. New monitors, fresh supplies, everything gleaming and ready. This is your station now, Reeves said. You'll lead trauma response, train residents, and help me rebuild protocols that don't suck. Questions? Just one. Why me? Because you're the best I've got. Because you proved it when it mattered. Because every nurse in this ER watched you stand up to cross and win, and now they know it's possible to fight back. Reeves pulled out her phone, showed Elena a screenshot. The press conference had been picked up by every major news outlet. Elena's face was everywhere. You're a symbol now whether you like it or not, Reeves said. Might as well use it for something good. The first call came at 8:23 a.m. Motor vehicle accident, 2 critical patients inbound. Elena took charge of the trauma team, 3 nurses she'd worked with before, 2 residents who looked terrified, and a respiratory therapist named Mike who'd been kind to her during the dark months. The patients arrived. 1 with a collapsed lung, 1 with internal bleeding. Elena moved through the organized chaos like she'd been doing it her whole life, calling orders, directing resources, her hands steady on chest tubes and IV lines. 20 minutes later, both patients were stabilized and heading to surgery. The younger resident, a woman named Dr. Shaw, stared at Elena. How did you know exactly what to do? Practice. Lots of it. Some of it in places where we didn't have CT scanners or blood banks. Elena stripped off her gloves. You'll get there. Can you teach me? Elena looked at her, saw herself at that age, hungry to learn, desperate to be good enough. Yes, she said, I can teach you. The rest of the shift was a blur. More traumas, more emergencies. At noon, during a brief lull, Elena found Patricia in the break room. Thank you, Elena said, for testifying, for telling the truth, for everything. Patricia shook her head. I should have done it sooner. Should have stood up to Cross the first time he went after you. You stood up when it counted. Still, Patricia poured coffee, handed Elena a cup. I've been doing this job for 22 years. I thought I knew how it worked. Turns out I didn't know anything. What changed? Watching you walk back into that trauma bay knowing you'd be fired for it. Watching you save a life while everyone else stood frozen. Patricia met Elena's eyes. I realized I'd been trading my courage for comfort, making myself small so I'd be safe. You reminded me that's not why I became a nurse. They drank their coffee in comfortable silence. At 4 p.m., Elena was documenting a pediatric case when hospital security approached. 2 men in suits flanked them. Major Vasquez, FBI, we need you to come with us. Torres appeared from nowhere. What's this about? Nathan Cross escaped federal custody 2 hours ago. We have reason to believe he may attempt to contact Major Vasquez. The ER went silent. Elena stood slowly, her knee protesting. How did he escape? Medical transport. He complained of chest pain, was taken to a hospital, and walked out during a shift change. The lead agent's jaw was tight. He's desperate. He's facing federal charges, and he's blamed Major Vasquez publicly for destroying his career. We consider him a credible threat. Reeves stepped forward. She's under my protection while she's in this hospital. Ma'am, with respect, this is a federal matter. We need to secure Major Vasquez in a safe location until Cross is apprehended. Elena looked around the ER, at the nurses watching, at the patients in beds beyond, at the work that still needed doing. No, she said. The agents blinked. Ma'am, this isn't optional. Your safety is my decision. I'm not running from Nathan Cross. I'm not hiding. I'm finishing my shift. Elena's voice was calm and absolute. Station officers here if you want. Monitor the entrances, but I'm not leaving these patients. Torres started to object. Elena cut her off with a look. The agents consulted quietly. One made a phone call. Finally, the lead agent nodded. We'll secure the perimeter, but you don't leave this building without escort. Understood? Understood. They posted officers at every entrance. Plainclothes agents moved through the corridors. The ER took on the tense atmosphere of a place under siege. Elena went back to work. At 6:15 p.m., a call came in. Stabbing victim, critical, ambulance 3 minutes out. At 6:18 p.m., the ambulance arrived. The back doors opened. The paramedics stepped out. And behind them, holding a scalpel to the throat of one of the EMTs, was Nathan Cross. He looked wild, unshaven, sweating. His eyes had the unfocused quality of someone who'd stopped sleeping, stopped eating, stopped being anything except desperate. Everybody back, Cross's voice cracked. Back or I cut him. The ER erupted. Staff scrambled. Patients screamed. Security rushed forward but stopped when Cross pressed the blade harder. Elena walked toward him. Elena, don't! Torres grabbed her arm. Elena pulled free and kept walking, slow, steady, hands visible. Nathan, put down the scalpel. You destroyed me. Spittle flew from Cross's mouth. I had a career. I had a future. You took everything. I saved a patient. You tried to kill him. Elena stopped 10 feet away. The FBI has evidence. The hospital has evidence. 200 witnesses have evidence. Running makes it worse. Taking a hostage makes it worse. Whatever you think happens next, this isn't it. They're going to lock me up, take my license, ruin my life. You ruined your own life the moment you decided cruelty was easier than competence. Elena's voice was quiet, but it carried. Let him go, Nathan. It's over. Cross's hand shook. The EMT whimpered. Then Cross's eyes went past Elena, and his face changed. Recognition, terror. Elena turned. General Brandt stood in the ambulance bay entrance, flanked by 4 MPs. He wasn't in uniform, just slacks and a shirt, but he wore authority like a second skin. Dr. Cross, Brandt said conversationally, I'm going to give you one chance to release that paramedic and surrender peacefully. If you don't take it, my people will take you down, and you will not enjoy the experience. You can't. This is civilian. The moment you took a federal witness hostage, it became my jurisdiction. Brandt took a step forward. I was a combat officer for 32 years. I've negotiated with warlords and terrorists. You're a coward with a scalpel having a tantrum. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to put down that blade. You're going to get on the ground. And you're going to hope that I'm in a forgiving mood when I decide whether to charge you with terrorism. The scalpel clattered to the pavement. The EMT ran. MPS moved in with professional efficiency. 30 seconds later, Cross was on the ground in restraints, and federal agents were reading him his rights. Brandt walked over to Elena. You okay? I'm fine. You walked toward an armed hostage taker. He wasn't armed. He was scared. Elena watched Cross being loaded into a federal vehicle. Scared people do stupid things, but they're still just scared. Brandt studied her face. You know he was planning to kill you, right? FBI found journals, plans. He wasn't here to surrender. He was here for revenge. I know. And you walked toward him anyway. Someone had to. Elena turned back to the ER, where staff were calming patients and securing the scene. Can I finish my shift now, sir? Brandt laughed, actually laughed. Dismissed, Major. The rest of the shift was chaos of a different kind. Police reports, witness statements, FBI interviews. Elena gave her account 3 times to 3 different agencies. At 11 p.m., she finally left through the secure exit with Torres and two federal marshals as escorts. In the parking garage, under fluorescent lights that buzzed with electrical hum, Torres finally spoke. Cross is going to federal prison for a very long time. The hostage situation added domestic terrorism charges. He'll plead out, but he's looking at minimum 15 years. Good. MedStaff Solutions filed for bankruptcy this afternoon. Their executives are cooperating with investigators in exchange for reduced charges. The whole thing is falling apart. Better? Torres stopped walking. Elena, you walked toward a man who wanted to kill you. Why? Elena thought about that, about the scared doctor holding a scalpel like it could save him from consequences, about the 18 months of humiliation she'd endured, about the moment she'd decided to stop hiding. Because someone had to show him that fear doesn't win, she said finally, that bullies only have power when we give it to them, and I was done giving. They reached Elena's car. The marshals did a security sweep, then stepped back. Get some sleep, Torres said. Tomorrow's going to be insane. More interviews, probably more job offers, definitely more press. Tomorrow I'm going back to work. Same shift, same ER, same job. You're sure? Elena unlocked her car. I'm sure. She drove home through empty streets, her mind quiet for the first time in weeks. At a red light, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Major Vasquez, this is Dr. Rachel Kim. I heard what happened tonight. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like. I'm testifying against Cross and MedStaff. No more hiding. The light changed. Elena drove forward, a small smile touching her face. At home, she showered, ate something that might have been dinner, and collapsed into bed. Sleep came immediately and hard. She woke to her phone ringing at 6 a.m. Dr. Reeves. Turn on the news. Elena fumbled for the remote. Every channel was covering the same story. The hostage situation, the federal investigation, the collapse of MedStaff Solutions, and everywhere, her face. The nurse who'd fought back, the veteran who'd refused to disappear, the woman who'd walked toward danger instead of away from it. You're trending on social media, Reeves said. The hashtag is #StandWithVeterans. There are already 3 congressional hearings scheduled to investigate discrimination against military medical professionals in civilian healthcare. Elena turned off the TV. I just want to do my job. I know, but your job just got bigger whether you like it or not. Reeves paused. The board wants to offer you a director position, head of trauma services, full authority to rebuild protocols and hire staff, significant pay increase. You'd report directly to me. I'm not qualified to be a director. You saved a colonel's life, testified before a medical board, survived a federal investigation, faced down your abuser on national television, and walked toward a hostage taker to talk him down. If that doesn't qualify you, nothing does. Reeves's voice softened. Think about it, but think fast. We need someone strong in that role, and I can't think of anyone stronger than you. The call ended. Elena sat in her quiet apartment watching dawn break over Clearwater Heights and tried to imagine herself as a director, as a leader, as someone other nurses looked to for guidance and protection. She thought about Patricia and Sarah and Dr. Shaw and all the others who'd stood with her or wanted to learn from her or just needed proof that fighting back was possible. She thought about the 217 veteran medical professionals who'd been pushed out of careers they'd earned. She thought about the next 18-year-old combat medic who'd come home from deployment and try to build a civilian medical career, and whether that person would face the same systematic destruction she had. Then she picked up her phone and texted Reeves. I'll take it. On one condition, we implement mandatory training on recognizing and utilizing military medical credentials. Every staff member, no exceptions. The response came immediately. Done. Welcome to leadership, Director Vasquez. Elena set down the phone and stared at her reflection in the dark screen. Director. The word felt foreign and heavy and right all at once. Her phone buzzed again, this time a news alert. Breaking. Federal grand jury indicts 3 MedStaff Solutions executives on conspiracy charges. 14 hospitals named as co-defendants in civil rights lawsuit. She read the article. Then the next one. Then the next. The dominoes were falling exactly as Agent Park had predicted. Hospitals scrambling to settle, administrators resigning, board members issuing apologies that arrived years too late to matter. And in the middle of it all, her face, her story, her refusal to disappear quietly becoming the catalyst for something that might actually change. At 6:45 a.m., she dressed for work. The same scrubs, the same shoes, the same knee-it that hurt when rain was coming. But when she looked in the mirror, she saw someone different than the woman who'd limped through the ER entrance 18 months ago, hoping to be invisible. She saw a director, a leader, someone who'd walked through fire and decided to stay in the heat to make sure no one else had to burn alone. Elena Vasquez locked her apartment and headed to work. But this time, she wasn't hiding. This time, she was ready for whatever came next. And this time, when she walked through those ER doors, everyone would know exactly who she was and what she could do. The quiet nurse was done being quiet, and the whole system was about to learn what that meant. The ER looked different at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning when you walked in as a director instead of a target. Elena pushed through the entrance and felt the shift immediately. Conversations didn't stop this time. They turned toward her. Nurses nodded with respect instead of pity. The new charge nurse, a veteran named Marcus who'd transferred in last week, actually smiled. "Morning, Director Vasquez. Coffee's fresh?" "Just Elena is fine." "Not anymore, it isn't." Marcus handed her a tablet. "Dr. Reeves wants you in the administrator's conference room at 8. Something about the new protocols you requested." Elena took the tablet and scanned the morning assignments. Trauma bay staffed with experienced nurses. Residents assigned to shadow the best teachers. Equipment properly stocked. Everything Cross had deliberately sabotaged now running the way it should have been all along. "Looks good," she said. "Should be. You wrote half these protocols yourself." Marcus glanced at his watch. "Fair warning, there is a reporter in the lobby asking for you. Third one this week. Security's keeping them out, but they're persistent." "Tell security I appreciate it, but I'll make a statement later, after patient care." "Copy that." Elena moved through the ER, checking on overnight holds, reviewing critical cases, stopping to help a young nurse who was struggling with a difficult IV stick. The nurse's hands were shaking. "Breathe," Elena said quietly, taking the catheter. "See how the vein rolls. Anchor it here. Approach at 15 degrees. Let the needle do the work." Flash of blood. The IV slid home perfectly. The nurse stared. "How did you make that look easy?" "Practice. Lots of failure. More practice." Elena secured the line and stepped back. "You'll get there. Just don't let anyone convince you that struggling means you're not good enough." At 7:45, she headed upstairs to the administrative wing. The conference room held more people than she expected. Dr. Reeves at the head of the table, Hospital CEO Brennan, Board Chairman Hensley, Captain Torres in uniform, and two people Elena didn't recognize, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a younger man carrying a briefcase that screamed federal government. "Director Vasquez," Reeves said, "please sit. We have news." Elena sat. Torres gave her a small nod that said, "Brace yourself." The older woman spoke first. "I'm Margaret Thorne, Deputy Secretary of Veterans Affairs. This is James Chen from the Office of Civil Rights." She slid a document across the table. "The investigation into MedStaff Solutions and affiliated hospitals concluded yesterday. 14 facilities have agreed to consent decrees requiring immediate policy changes, staff training, and compliance monitoring. 3 executives are facing criminal charges, and 217 veteran medical professionals are receiving settlement offers with full back pay and restoration of credentials." Elena picked up this document. Pages of legal language that boiled down to justice, finally, for people who'd been silenced. "There's more," Chen said. "We're proposing federal legislation, the Veterans Medical Professional Protection Act. It would criminalize systematic discrimination against military-trained healthcare workers and establish federal oversight of credential recognition. Your testimony was instrumental in building support." "When does it pass?" "Next month, if the current momentum holds. We have bipartisan backing." Chen smiled slightly. "Turns out nobody wants to be on record opposing veterans who save lives." Brennan cleared his throat. "Mercy General is named in the consent decree. We're required to implement comprehensive reforms, including mandatory training on military credentials, establishment of a Veterans Advocacy Committee, and he looked directly at Elena, public acknowledgement of our failures in your case. What does that mean? Hensley opened another folder. It means a formal public apology, a ceremony recognizing your service and your contributions, restoration of any reputation damage through official channels, and a permanent endowed position in your name, the Vasquez Fellowship for Veteran Medical Professionals Transitioning to Civilian Healthcare. Elena sat very still. A fellowship. Full funding for housing, education, and mentorship for 3 veterans per year. In perpetuity. Hensley's voice was quiet. We can't undo what happened to you, but we can make sure it helps others. The room waited. Elena looked at the document in front of her, at the faces around the table, at Torres, who was carefully not showing emotion. I accept, Elena said, on one condition. The fellows report directly to me. I choose them. I mentor them. And if anyone in this hospital even thinks about treating them the way I was treated, I have full authority to handle it. Brennan nodded. Done. One more thing. Elena looked at Reeves. I want Patricia Chen promoted to trauma coordinator. She's earned it. Already in the works, Reeves said, along with raises for Sarah and every nurse who testified on your behalf. Consider it handled. The meeting continued for another hour, working through details. Federal oversight requirements, training schedules, recruitment for the fellowship program. By the time they finished, Elena's head was spinning with logistics and possibilities. Torres walked her back to the ER. How are you holding up? I'm not sure yet. Ask me in a week. Fair. Torres stopped at the elevator. One last thing. Nathan Cross's sentencing is next month. Federal prosecutor wants to know if you'll provide a victim impact statement. Elena thought about Cross in a federal courtroom, facing the consequences of every cruelty, every threat, every moment he'd used fear as a weapon. Yes, she said, I'll be there. The weeks that followed blurred together in a cascade of change. The public apology ceremony brought media attention Elena didn't want but accepted as necessary. Reporters asked about courage and resilience. She talked about systems and accountability instead. The fellowship applications started arriving. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Combat medics and flight nurses and surgical techs, all with stories that echoed her own. Elena read every application personally, looking for the ones who'd been broken and were trying to rebuild. The ones who limped. The ones who flinched at loud noises. The ones who knew what it meant to save lives in impossible conditions. She chose 3 for the first cohort. A former Army medic who'd lost hearing in one ear to an IED. A Navy corpsman with PTSD so severe she'd spent 2 years afraid to work in hospitals. An Air Force para-rescue specialist who'd been told his emergency medicine experience didn't translate to civilian care. They started in October. Elena met with them every week, watching them navigate a system that had nearly destroyed her. When they struggled, she intervened. When staff questioned their credentials, she educated. When anyone suggested they weren't good enough, she showed them the door. By December, all 3 were thriving. The Army medic was running trauma codes with a competence that made residents jealous. The Navy corpsman was working in pediatric emergency with a gentleness that made parents cry with relief. The Air Force specialist had saved 4 lives in his first month using techniques no civilian-trained medic would have known. The ER transformed. Other hospitals started calling, asking about the fellowship program. Medical schools requested her protocols. 3 congressional committees invited her to testify about veteran healthcare integration. Elena said yes to the committees. The testimony was brief and direct. Veterans saved lives, systems that ignored their expertise endangered patients, and discrimination dressed up as risk management was still discrimination. The legislation passed with overwhelming support. Nathan Cross's sentencing hearing fell on a gray January morning 6 months after the hostage incident. Elena arrived at the federal courthouse with Torres wearing the same blue shirt she'd worn to every major confrontation. Armor. The courtroom was smaller than she expected. Cross sat at the defense table looking diminished, prison jumpsuit, thinning hair, the arrogance burned away by consequence. He didn't look at her when she entered. The prosecutor called Elena to provide her victim impact statement. She walked to the podium, looked at the judge, and spoke. Nathan Cross didn't just attack me. He attacked the idea that competence matters more than ego, that saving lives is more important than protecting territory, that veterans who've proven themselves under fire deserve respect, not suspicion. She paused. He made me doubt myself. Made me question whether I belonged in a profession I'd served honorably for 16 years. Made me small and scared and willing to accept cruelty as the price of employment. Cross's lawyer started to stand. The judge waved him down. But he also showed me something important, Elena continued. He showed me that systems protect bullies until someone refuses to stay silent. That documentation and witnesses and truth still matter. That one person standing up can expose rot that's been hidden for years. She looked directly at Cross for the first time. So thank you, Dr. Cross, because destroying me was the biggest mistake you ever made. It woke me up. It made me fight. And now hundreds of veterans are going to have opportunities you tried to deny me. She sat down. Cross's hands were shaking on the table. The judge sentenced him to 18 years in federal prison. Assault, obstruction, witness intimidation, domestic terrorism for the hostage incident. The sentences ran consecutively because the judge said anyone who attacked healthcare workers deserved no mercy. Cross was led out in chains. He looked back once, his face hollow with understanding that this was real, this was permanent, this was the rest of his life. Elena felt nothing except relief. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded. Elena gave them 2 minutes. Justice was served today, not just for me, but for every veteran who's been told their service doesn't count, every nurse who's been bullied into silence, every patient who's been endangered by egos masquerading as expertise. She adjusted her bag. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. She walked away from the cameras, Torres beside her, and didn't look back. Spring came to Clearwater Heights with unexpected warmth. The fellowship program expanded to 6 positions. Elena hired 2 more veteran nurses to help with training. The ER's patient outcomes improved dramatically, shorter wait times, better satisfaction scores, fewer complications. Other hospitals started implementing similar programs. The Veterans Medical Professional Protection Act created federal standards for recognizing military credentials. MedStaff Solutions declared bankruptcy and dissolved. Its executives were serving prison sentences or cooperating with ongoing investigations. On a Tuesday in April, exactly 1 year after the night she'd saved Colonel Whitmore, Elena was reviewing fellowship applications in her office when Dr. Reeves knocked. "Got a minute?" "Always." Reeves sat down, looking tired but satisfied. "The board just approved something I think you'll appreciate. They're renaming the trauma unit." Elena looked up. "To what?" "The Vasquez Trauma Center. Official dedication ceremony next month. They want you to speak." Elena set down her pen. I don't need my name on a building. It's not about what you need. It's about what this hospital needs. A reminder that defending your people matters more than protecting your reputation. That doing the right thing is worth the cost. That quiet doesn't mean weak." Reeves smiled. "Also, it'll look great on recruitment materials. Come work in the trauma center named after the combat veteran who rebuilt emergency medicine. Applications are already up 40%. Because of publicity. Because people want to work somewhere that values competence over politics. Somewhere that stood by someone when it would have been easier to destroy her. You gave us that. Let us honor it." The dedication ceremony drew a crowd that spilled out of the auditorium into the hallways. Elena stood backstage with General Brandt, who'd flown in from Washington for the event, and Colonel Whitmore, who looked healthier than she'd ever seen him. "Nervous?" Brandt asked. "Terrified." "Good. Fear means you care." He adjusted his uniform. "You know what I told the Senate Armed Services Committee last week? I told them the best investment the military ever made was training people like you. Because you didn't just serve and disappear. You took everything we taught you and used it to save lives and fix broken systems and prove that veterans make everything better." Whitmore squeezed her shoulder. "My nephew's getting married next month. David, the one you saved in Helmand. He asked me to tell you he named his daughter Elena, said he wanted her to grow up knowing that courage looks like a woman who refused to quit." Elena's eyes burned. You didn't have to tell me that. Yes, I did. Because you need to understand what you represent. Not just to veterans, but to everyone who's been told they don't belong. You're proof that standing up works, that systems can change, that one person really can make a difference. They called her name. Elena walked onto the stage to applause that felt like thunder. She stood at the podium looking out at faces she knew. Patricia and Sarah in the front row, Dr. Reeves and the new residents, Marcus and the ER staff, Torres in uniform, the 3 fellowship recipients, reporters in the back, and in the middle section, dozens of people wearing military insignia or veteran pins, the ones who'd come because they needed to see that fighting back was possible. A year ago, Elena began, I was a nurse who limped through shifts hoping to be invisible, who accepted humiliation as the price of employment, who believed that keeping quiet was the same as staying safe. She paused. I was wrong about that. Silence doesn't protect you. It just makes it easier for bad systems to pretend they're not broken. The room was absolutely silent. This trauma center isn't named after me because I'm special. It's named after me because I got caught, because my fight became visible, because a colonel almost died and military investigators got involved and suddenly all the quiet cruelty couldn't hide anymore. She looked at the fellowship recipients, but there were 216 others who didn't get caught, who left quietly because they thought they had no choice. This trauma center is for them too. It's proof that we remember, that we're sorry, that we're trying to be better. She gripped the podium edge. To every veteran working in healthcare right now, you belong here. Your training matters. Your experience saves lives. If anyone tells you different, they're wrong. If any system tries to push you out, fight back, document everything, find witnesses. Refuse to disappear quietly, because you are not disposable. You are not damaged goods. You are exactly what healthcare needs. The applause was deafening. Elena stepped back from the podium, her knee aching, her heart steady. After the ceremony, she found Patricia outside the auditorium, crying quietly. You okay? Elena asked. I'm perfect. Patricia wiped her eyes. I spent 20 years in nursing telling myself that keeping my head down was wisdom, that surviving was enough. Then I watched you walk back into that trauma bay, and I realized I'd been lying to myself. Survival isn't enough. We're supposed to fight for each other. You did fight when it counted, because you showed me how. Patricia hugged her, quick and fierce. Thank you. Elena watched her walk away, then found a quiet corner to breathe. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Major Vasquez. This is Captain Jennifer Hayes, Army Medical Corps. I just got forced out of my position at a hospital in Denver for inability to adapt to civilian protocols. I saw your press conference. Can I apply for your fellowship program? I don't want to quit. I just need someone who believes I'm not broken. Elena read it twice, then typed back. Send me your application. You're not broken. The system is. We'll fix it. 3 dots appeared. Then, thank you. You have no idea how much I needed to hear that. But Elena did know. She knew exactly how much those words mattered, how much difference one person believing in you could make, how the space between giving up and fighting back was sometimes just someone saying you're worth fighting for. She forwarded the text to her assistant with a note to prioritize the application. That evening, after the crowds dispersed and the reporters left and the building settled into quiet, Elena stood in the newly dedicated Vasquez Trauma Center. The nameplate gleamed on the wall, fresh paint, updated equipment, everything ready for the next emergency, the next life to be saved. Dr. Shaw found her there, the young resident who'd asked to learn. Director Vasquez, I wanted to tell you I got accepted to the Trauma Surgery Fellowship at Johns Hopkins. I'm leaving next month. Elena turned. Congratulations, you earned it. I wouldn't have even applied if you hadn't taught me. You made me believe I could do this, that being afraid doesn't mean being incapable. Shaw hesitated. When I get there, when I start teaching residents myself someday, I'm going to remember what you showed me, that the best teachers don't just transfer knowledge, they transfer courage. She left Elena alone in the trauma bay where everything had changed. Elena walked to the window and looked out at Clearwater Heights settling into evening, lights coming on, traffic flowing, the ordinary rhythm of a city that had no idea how close it had come to losing something important. Her phone rang. Torres. Just got word from the VA. The Protection Act is working. 3 hospitals have already been flagged for discriminatory practices and forced to implement corrective action. 2 executives resigned rather than face investigation. And applications to the VA medical system are up 18% because veterans are hearing they'll be valued. Good. More than good. Revolutionary. Torres paused. You did that, Elena. You stood up when everyone else was lying down, and you changed the whole system. I had help. You had people who followed your lead. There's a difference. Torres's voice softened. Take the win. You earned it. The call ended. Elena stood in the quiet trauma bay, feeling the weight of the years settle over her like a blanket. The humiliation, the fear. The moment she'd decided to walk back into that room, knowing it would cost everything. The terrifying freedom of refusing to be invisible. She thought about Nathan Cross in federal prison, his career ash, his threats powerless. She thought about the 217 veterans getting settlements and apologies. She thought about the fellowship recipients learning they belonged. She thought about the next 18-year-old combat medic who'd come home and try to build a life, and how maybe, the path would be a little easier now. Her knee ached. It always would. Some damage didn't heal. It just became part of who you were. But standing here in the trauma center that bore her name, in the hospital that had tried to destroy her, Elena Vasquez felt something she hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not the arrogant kind that Nathan Cross had wielded like a weapon. The quiet kind. The earned kind. The kind that came from surviving fire and deciding to use the scars to light the way for others. She picked up her bag and headed for the exit. Tomorrow would bring more work, more fellowship applications, more veterans needing someone to believe in them, more broken systems to fix. But tonight, she'd go home to her small apartment and sleep the sleep of someone who'd fought the fight and won. The ER was quiet as she passed through. Night shift settling in. A few nurses at the station looked up and nodded. One gave her a small salute. Elena nodded back and kept walking. The parking garage was nearly empty. Her car sat under fluorescent lights that buzzed with electrical hum. She unlocked it, slid inside, and sat for a moment in the silence. Then she started the engine and drove home through streets she knew by heart, past the coffee shop where Dr. Kim had handed her evidence, past the federal building where she'd testified, past the courthouse where Cross had been sentenced, past all the places where quiet had ended and justice had begun. At a red light, her phone buzzed one more time. An email from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Dear Director Vasquez, on behalf of the Secretary of Veterans Affairs and the United States government, we wish to inform you that you have been selected to receive the Presidential Citizens Medal for your extraordinary service in protecting the rights and dignity of veteran medical professionals. The ceremony will be held at the White House next month. Details to follow. With deepest respect and gratitude. Elena read it twice, then set the phone down. The light turned green. She drove forward into the night, toward home, toward rest, toward whatever came next. Behind her, the Vasquez Trauma Center stood ready, named for a woman who'd been told she didn't belong and decided that was a lie worth fighting. Ahead, a future where veterans like her wouldn't have to fight alone. And in between, Elena Vasquez, 52 years old, combat veteran, trauma nurse, director, mentor, survivor, limping still, but never ever quiet again. The road stretched ahead, and she drove it with steady hands, knowing that sometimes the greatest act of courage was refusing to disappear. Sometimes justice required nothing more than one person saying enough. Sometimes the quiet ones changed everything, and they did it not by being loud, but by being unbreakable. The city lights faded in her rearview mirror as Elena drove home, her story complete, her fight won, her purpose clear. They had mocked the quiet nurse in the ER, until she stood up and reminded them what strength looked like, and the whole world learned to listen.